short break from what was a tremendous opening season in 2022. We are here for the 2023 qualifier series for the Logitech G Pro Invitational. And what a way to kick it off. We are here at Phillip Island for round one of the qualifying series. I am Jake Blackmore. Joining me in the comm box is none other than Stephen Sandman Clark. And a special guest for the qualifying series, Jake Burton, has joined us in the commentary booth as well to get all his takes for what is a star-studded lineup. 25 spots to get in, 45 drivers, Sandman. What a way to kick it off tonight.
G'day, Jake, and g'day, Jake, in the background. Yeah, mate, absolutely pumped for this. A brand new series, and of course, like we said, it's a qualifying series, basically. There's been so much enthusiasm about what we had last year that there's people that are actually itching to get into the series, and the only way to cull it is unfortunately have a qualifying series just to get that top 20 just to make it through. And what a year of racing we're going to have. We saw, like you said, you touched on it, it was an incredible year of racing last year, and this year is only going to be bigger and better, no doubt.
That's it. We're going to get this qualifying series underway here at Phillip Island. And Jake, what a championship it was. Unfortunate for you, some unlucky racing, but it's going to be good to hear your input into this field of drivers that you'll have to compete against.
Yeah, that's it. Well, the top 25 anyway. But yeah, what I think is going to be really interesting is the reality of this first season being an invitational series is there are a few names who maybe might have been overlooked, might have been missed, or maybe just didn't want to have a crack until they saw what the product was. But this is actually a pretty stacked lineup, I'd say, for a qualifying series. There's some big Supercars E-Series names in here, some guys who have been smashing the official series and whatnot as of late, and even V8 Scops race winners and whatnot. So for a qualifying race, this is pretty competitive, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a bit of a competitive field, just to say the least. And we saw Bradley Vaughan decide to take his Mustang off through the gravel trap, and it's going to be one of those championships, I think, even though it's only 4 races, you have to perform, don't you, Sam, man? We said that last year. There was no drop rounds in the championship, 1 or 2 bad rounds for Jake Burton's sake, where it didn't go its way. It knocked him out of the championship hunt. It's the same thing here. 4 races, you have to get yourself inside that top 20 in points to get into the field next year, or this year, sorry.
Absolutely. It's a bit of a pressure cooker, isn't it? And I guess that's kind of, in a way, I guess maybe in the background, that could be kind of the reasoning behind it too. It's like, put them in a pressure situation, put them up against some really fast, great drivers and see how you perform. And exactly like you said, when you've only got 4 races to make it count, you really have to think about those moves. You don't want to do anything silly to take yourself out of contention for that first race, because you are going to have Buckley's chance to try and make it up, or it's definitely going to make it a lot harder for you in those remaining 3 races if you want to be part of this series.
That's exactly right. And again, Sam, what did we say after last season? It was so tight. There's no gap in practice at the moment. Top 10 separated by 0.2 of a second. Top 20, less than half a second separates the field. That just shows the lineup that we've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And mate, if we're seeing this in practice, then it's like all these guys now are just starting to think about quali now. We're only sort of a minute or so, just over a minute away before qualifying starts. So they know that they've been able to produce it on track. They've obviously got very comfortable with their cars. They've got a decent setup underneath them, but now it's time to perform in qualifying.
Yeah, qualifying, the big talking point heading into tonight. 2 sessions, 15 minutes. The field is going to be split. The top 23, or bottom 23, I should say, from pre-qual will come out first. Then the top 22 drivers will come out later in the session. They'll have 15 minutes to try and beat that session. How do you feel that's going to take, Jake, in terms of how these drivers prepare themselves for this session? Because it's different. It's not a normal qualifying format. That split qualifying really changes it up. And how do you think that's going to make it a little bit interesting for those guys who are coming out in that later session?
Well, I think the historical thing is it's about 3 o'clock in game time at the moment, so the track should get faster and faster. We've passed the hottest part of the day, so you would expect that second session to be a bit quicker. Plus, you sort of see where everyone's at, what everyone's lap time is, so you've got a bit of a benchmark to work off. I think 15 minutes isn't a long session. That's the other thing. So you're probably going to get 2 goes at it, I'd say. Yeah, really making sure you bank that first lap in and then try and rip that extra 10th out of it on the second.
Yeah, we've got to remember as well, like you said, there is a no escape rule in effect. You can't escape. You have to drive it back to the pit lane. Let's see how many get caught out by that in the first season. We saw it at the last year, didn't we, Sam? Had a couple of people got caught out by that as qualifying gets underway. it was just one of those things that just a quick little oversight that you just come into the series. Some championships do, some don't, and you just forget about that. But I think for this series, these guys will be on their money, and Sandman, it's going to be one of those tight qualifying sessions again as the rest of the field starts to flow out for the first part of qualifying.
That's it. It's one of our favourite parts of the races that we just see all the cars nose to tail just trundling out of pit lane, and this is now important for them to get on it. Like you guys both discussed, 15 minutes sounds like a long time, but it's not really when you have to consider your out lap and your in lap and if you make a mistake. So, yeah, they're all sort of going through the motions now and trying to get themselves a little bit of real estate because you don't want to be balked in these short sessions.
That's another thing we've got to talk about. I think, Jake, you'll be one of the best people to talk about this. How does it feel in terms of in this car? Obviously, we're still in that Gen 2 car, mind you, for this qualifying series. How does it feel in terms of draft? We know how important it is. Is this one of the places where we know that you really want that extra bit of toe, but it can hinder you through the fast stuff?
Yeah, it's a bit of an up and down track. The tricky thing about this place is obviously you do get a pretty huge gain down the main straight. A lot of people don't realise, even though it's not the longest straight in the world, you come onto the main straight here at Phillip Island in 5th gear, so you're absolutely hauling. And the issue you have is you might gain 2/10 or so by turn 1. You can get a bit of a gain off sudden loop and down towards Honda as well, but the issue you've got is you're just going to be plagued with aero push through turns 1 and 2, and in my opinion it's sort of not really worth it unless you can jag it at the right time, which is really hard. I almost think in these short sessions you better just go out, find a bit of track, do the best you can, not worry about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I do agree on that. I think trying to find your own bit of space, clear air, can be beneficial, and that's one of the parts that I think a lot of these drivers will be looking for. Now, I'm going to get stuffed up with a lot of names. I think we're all going to be in the commentary box figuring that one out. It's all new. It's a whole new season. People have changed teams. As for yourself, Jake, now going back to TTR. Tell us about that before we get into this qualifying session, going back to your old team.
Yeah, obviously lot's changed in the last 4 years since I departed there. But while it's changed, a lot has stayed the same. Obviously, Brady Scott's champion this year, and front-running cars in the Logitech G Pro Invitational as well. So it just felt right to come back around this time. So I'm excited to see how we go. And speaking of TTR drivers, actually, there's quite a few in this race. Josh Muggleton heading now into turn 1. He's someone who will probably want to be in the top 5 in this qual series.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be wanting to show his hand. He has been obviously quick in where every time he jumps in, especially in terms of his aspect in terms of the Enduro series, wasn't he, Sandman? He was quick. He got unlucky at numerous times, but we know how quick he can be, Sandman, and I'm sure we'll see him up near the front. And a lot of these guys starting to get into the rhythm. A couple of TTR cars following 1 and 2 behind each other into Miller Corner, coming out of turn 4, and Sandman, I think this is what it's going to be. Get this first lap in, as we've always said. Get the banker in, go again for your second run.
Yeah, I live by that, mate, is regardless of what session you're in, is maybe find that space, get that banker down, make sure you put together something, and then maybe work on, if you've got teammates in the field, maybe working together to try and get that little bit of draft. But as Jake touched on, it's not as easy as, as you think, as just to try and get a draft, because sometimes you can be with a driver and they're not quite hitting their marks, and you can see the gains that some of these drivers make under brakes. Someone locks a brake, exactly like we saw there. Those little things can hinder you, so it's important that you get that banker.
Yeah, it's that banker that you need. As Young goes to the top, Bailey Frid then goes up in front of him, takes himself up to provisional pole at the moment in this first part of qualifying. Blackburn moves up into P number 5. It's going to be one of these sessions where we learn as Muggleton, there it is, Josh Muggleton straight to the top, a 128.3 in the opening qualifying session of the season. It's currently 4 minutes in. That's a good time, good banker lap, Sandman. It's a couple of tenths over the rest of the field already.
Yeah, I'm stoked for Muggo because he did find that little bit of real estate. So now he's put that banker in, and what a banker! When you put your banker down and it's P1, that's a great start for him. So he'll regroup. You'll find probably all these cars will head straight back, put on another set of Dunlops, and they'll go again.
That's right. There's a lot of these guys now finishing that first lap. Most probably coming down at the moment. The top 5, Muggleton, Bailey Frid, Troy Maguire, Zachary Hamlin, Thomas Hims, as Bradley Vaughan shoots himself up inside that top 10 into P number 7. Obviously, Bradley Vaughan jumping into Super 2, I believe, this year. There has been so much movement in everything that's going on. And Jake, how does that feel? Some of these guys with actual supercar experience as well. Obviously, Joe Stewart's moving himself up into Super 3 that got announced as well. How do you think that translates well into the sim?
Well, I think there's actually quite a few real-life drivers in this category now. Like, we had the privilege of having the likes of, Shane Van Gisbergen and Brody Kostecki last season at differing points. But, even if you looked at this field, even say Josh Muggleton, for example, he was totally undefeated in his class in the New South Wales Production Touring Car Championship this year. You've got also Job Stewart making the step up to Super 3. So Aaron Borg, he's a two-time national champion in national level car racing here. So there's even maybe not Supercars experience. There's some guys who really know how to steer in this field, and that will make a difference, especially when performing under pressure.
No, that's exactly right. And we've got to remember there is a lot of drivers in this championship as well, in the main series, as we've touched on as well, that have that experience in whatever it is, whether it's obviously XLs, 86s, V8 Supercars. There is the field is star-studded, and we're trying to add 20 odd more to this championship as the rest of them come back out now for the second run. 6 minutes already off the clock, Sam, and we said it was going to go quick, and it's already gone past 6 minutes. There's not long. They could maybe get 2 more runs at it if they're quick enough.
Yeah, I was going to touch on and ask Jake, because obviously he's a competitor in this series.
Yeah.
When you're at places like Phillip Island, Jake, when you are in this qualifying session, is there much point sometimes carrying on to try and push for that second lap, or you better just to cut your losses and head straight to pit lane for those fresh tyres?
No, you'll see most of the guys out here, Sam, man, like Josh Muggleton, his outlap was a 1 minute 52, I believe. So you'll see a lot of these guys will probably be running about 10 seconds off the pace on the outlap to just preserve the best of the tyre. It is a bit of a sort of catch-22 though, because you find with the slow outlap that you're a little bit slower through turns 1 and 2. So you'll lose a little bit of time through there, but then at the end of the lap with the slow outlap, you still got drive off corners like MG and the little kink afterwards. Whereas if you go straight out in the outlap and set the world on fire, you'll find that you're starting to run out of drive by that point. So yeah, about the 150 mark will be the outlap pace, and typically your second lap, I think you'll drop about 3/10. But if you make a big mistake at the end of this session and have the time to run around again, but not enough time to get back to the lane, you'll definitely go for a second one. But typically, no, you'll always be faster on that first lap.
I definitely think that's what we're going to see, is that opening lap is going to be the one. These guys coming across the stripe should get 2 more goes at it as we look down through the field. Still stagnant as it is. Justin Clayton now going down into turn number 1 with a good run in through turn 1. A little bit of a couple of cars in front of him, Sam, but he's got that gap. Like Jake said, if you can get a little bit of a gap, you can sort of focus on. He's a little bit too close. I think that a little bit of draft may hurt him. As he gets on that power, and out goes the rear end out of the southern loop. That's going to cost him a couple of tenths.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, he was probably in that zone, but just as he got off the exit of the turn, he just lit up those tyres. He's got a little bit sideways. It doesn't look like a lot, but when you've got that gauge on your dash and it's starting to go into the red, you can already see he's sort of pulled off already. So, he'll dart straight back to pit lane and go for a set of tyres, but it doesn't take much just to see that little timer start to dip into the red and you start kicking yourself.
It's always the worst thing when you see the relative go the opposite direction after a little mistake. You go, yep, that lap's done. Let's just roll around again for a whole lap and get set to go again. But that's what these guys do. They put it all on the line right when they need to. Qualifying's definitely not my strong point. I don't know whether it's yours. Either of you two are definitely not my strong point. I can't qualify to save my life.
I can barely drive, mate. Don't worry about qualifying.
That's why we're in the comms booth and Jake's driving and we're here in Eastern Special Comms. That's why we're not in it. But Jake, is that something as well? You know a lot of the drivers as well. Are there drivers out there that are better in qualifying trim than race?
Oh, for sure. There's definitely people who are better racers. I think that's probably more common. I think struggling to put that last half tenth that you might see someone insane like Dane Warren put together, that's really tough. But there are, guys who pedal away can be really good racers. I think, the likes of Josh Muggleton is probably one of them. So it's actually good for him that he's come out and put that provisional pole time down, because he's typically a guy who will make his way through. Zach Hanlon's another one I've seen who's just jumped up. Relatively experienced guy, Altus Esports driver. I think he's just actually fallen down to 7th while I've said that, but he's a guy who can make his way through the field as well. Thomas Hintz, also very experienced driver, guys who can, work their way forward and race pretty smart.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, Muggleton improved his time, and lucky he did, because Harrison Dengate decided to put in a lap time that was only a tenth slower, moved himself up into P2. Sebastian Vandel did the same thing, and Bradley Vaughan again improved to P number 7. Is that going to be his spot for this season? Let's find out. A car 5 in P7. Let's see if that goes for the whole qualifying series. It's like you said, Zach Hamlin, obviously vastly experienced with Altus Esports, as he makes a mistake into turn 10. He's got the thing all ragged on the edge. I think that's going to be a new... Yep, that's an abort. Get some new tyres and come again as he slides the car out of turn 11. Yeah, that's pit stop time. New windows. 5 minutes left. New tyres on that car. 5 minutes left of the session. You have a look at Zach's just putting on a show out there. Just going to slide the rear of the car. Puts it in slow mo, does Luke, as always. Hitting the marks on the cameras. And look at that Altus Esports Commodore right out sideways. Got the car stopped, and he's like, yep, all right, pit stop time. Let's get some more fresh boots on that car. And Sandman, not much time left, so that was basically the point where, as we see in pit lane, it's just everyone.
Yeah, and I think, you'll see that the, top 10 or so, they'll be reasonably happy, and everyone else outside of that is like, right, damn it, let's go again. We've got one more shot at it. So, yeah, they'll be fine in real estate, trying to find someone to team up with, or just getting that free track position, like we said, just a little bit of air. But man, how does it feel, Jake, when you know that you've only got that one more lap to go? Obviously, you're looking at the clock. You probably haven't put down a time that you've actually wanted, because you're capable in practice. Do you have to block that out? Like how much of a stress does that become in those dying minutes of qualifying?
Well, I think I got some really good advice when I was working with Andrew Edwards during the Supercars E-Series. Obviously, won Bathurst this year as an engineer, really talented guy, and he gave me probably one of the best bits of advice I've ever heard, which is a lot of people go out in qualifying and make a mistake and then go into the next braking zone and try and make up for it. So you spend a whole week practicing, and then you decide that in qualifying you're going to suddenly be capable of braking 10 metres later than you ever have. It's just not going to happen. So I think what you really need to do in that last lap of qualifying, when the pressure's on, is just drive to your marker. Just do the lap that you know you can do. Don't try and set the world on fire. Drive smart, make your apexes, and you should put a relatively good time together, and then you can make it up in the race. That's the big thing. Don't try and chase huge numbers when really all you need is a number.
I like that, because at the end of the year, you're exactly right. But just because it's qualifying doesn't mean you're going to break a metre later. That's really good advice. I like that.
I think we've all been foul of doing that. I think at some stage where we've all just gone, yep, let's go. As a couple of these guys setting up once again, just rolling around, trying to get into that zone and set themselves up for another. That Tyson Broad right now, right behind Zachary Anlin, who is getting ready for another lap as they come out of turn 11 and then going to set themselves up down at the front straight. This will be their final qualifying lap. Looking at lap times will be roughly there. They may get another one in this one. Coming across the stripe with 2 minutes to go, they could get another lap, Jake. So, like you said as well, you come in, you do the lap. If you know this one's off, you abort pretty quick to try and keep those tyres cool.
Yeah, that's it. You can make it happen for that second lap, but yeah, as I say, you're probably going to drop 3 or so tenths typically, maybe a little less if you're bought early enough. Yeah, really pressure's on for these guys now. Fortunately, the likes of Zach have put together probably a decent time, and he's just lost the rear coming off sudden loop, so he's going to be done. Hopefully he doesn't get in the way of Tyson Broad, who's still on a decent lap though.
Yeah, if he can roll out that Broad, he's gonna most probably run it deep. He did exactly what you said, Jake. Tried to outbrake, make up the time that he lost, and around he goes. He actually just planted the throttle, lost the rear. That's gonna make Broad slap. He's gonna roll out of that one. One of the TTR cars goes through, as well as the Fishy Motorsports Mustang rolls through. While that was all going on, Thomas Hinds moves himself up into P4, which is a good lap time from him to put himself in that window. Michael Whiting right now on the screen as we look further up to Thomas Hinds. He put himself up into P4. It's a good job in this open qualifying session. Remember, we do have another qualifying session coming up with the top 22 drivers from the qualifying series. They'll be trying to situate themselves in amongst this paddock of drivers that have come out in this opening session. Like Jake said, the track will start to cool off. It could get better for those guys in the later session, but here they go. Some of these guys coming up to finish most probably their final flying lap of the opening qualifying session for the Logitech G Pro Supercar Pro Invitational qualifying series, round 1 here tonight from Phillip Island. Michael Angus is going to come across the stripe, moves himself up into P number 12. Is there any other improvements throughout the field tonight? And it's looking like we could get a couple in the late dying stages. Chris Ireland, he had 2 personal bests in the last 2 sectors, but doesn't improve time or position. Keeps himself in P number 7. Sam Man is coming down to the wire as always.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it a kick in the guts when you're watching those sectors and you go, yes, I went fastest in sector 1. Yes, I went sector 2. Ah, crap, sector 3 wasn't that great. And it's like, oh, I didn't improve. And sometimes it gets so close where you can see your improvements in the sectors, but it just doesn't pay out. That's how close the field is. So was it Muggleton still holding on to P1? I think he might have done enough that he may hold on in this session.
Yeah, I think he is. It's Justin Wallace moved himself up into P15 with his last lit effort. This checkered flag is out on the opening qualifying session of the season. We look through a couple of other cars. Cameron Peacock now on a lap. He's fighting, coming around the last corner in the SSR Commodore. Where will this put him on his final lap? Personal best first sector, not a good middle sector. Last sector wasn't that good either. No improvement of time. He is going to stay down in P number 18, and a couple of other guys, no real lighting up of the timing sheets. Only Tyson Broad with a personal best middle sector at the moment for car number 27 as we get on to see where he's at. A little bit of a wiggle coming out of turn 11. Now he's going to set up this final corner, try and get the run onto the main stride, try and maximize it, run all the way down the right, and he's wide. That's well wide, and that's off the giddy litter. He was pushing hard to try and make up time. Wasn't going to happen there, Sam.
Yeah, I think it started, looked like you got that inside front just up on that curb, and it looks like it upset the car a little bit, and then, yeah, basically it just sort of understeered off that. It's such a fast part of the track too. You carry so much, well, you want to carry so much speed because you want to take that all the way down the front straight with you. So unfortunate, but nevertheless, it's only quali, and he's still got time to make that up in the race.
Yeah, a lot of time to make up in the race. It's a 45-lap race, 2 compulsory pit stops, plenty of time to try and make up some positions. As Bradley Vaughns brings the ERT Mustang on the pit lane, finishing 8th. I think he'll be a little bit disappointed. 3/10 off the top, but Jake, good time there from Muggo. Sets himself up in a really good position so far after the first session. Any standout people from you in terms of obviously who you've raced against so far?
Yeah, well, obviously Muggo is going to be always going to be up the front. He's got a pretty good 10th and a half lead. I think he's got some big players still to come, the likes of James Scott, Adam Briggs, Brian Borg, even Andrew Dyson, Job Stewart, all those guys still to come. So I think he might struggle to hang on to it. But one thing that's really a good indication for Muggo's level of pace at the moment is he went out, he ran 2 flying laps, and each one of them was in the 0.3 bracket. So even if he didn't put his best foot forward in qualifying, you know he's got consistent pace in that car, which is what you need in a race. He should be somewhere near the front, so hopefully he can make the most of that and start to move forward, even if he gets pipped in this second session.
Yeah, that's right. He always has had that consistent pace, and obviously it's no surprise to see him at the top of the first session, and also to see him having a crack at making the qualifying series for the main series. We saw his pace, didn't we, Sam? And with himself and Josh at obviously at Bathurst, at Sandown, they were quick. Bathurst was just one of those unfortunate ones, and again, we know what he can do as we look at the brand new Aston Martin safety car for this year, the Logitech G safety car out on track as they get ready for the second session, Sam, and it's good to see that we got this safety car out, and hopefully we don't see it at all tonight.
Yes, I think that's what everyone will be praying for. And like we touched on, with only a 4-round series, you don't want to be part of that reason for the safety car coming out, because then that just makes your nights difficult for here on in. But good quali session. I wanted to talk to Jake and ask his opinion about, if you had the choice, would you prefer to be in session 1 or session 2, as there's a little bit more rubber on the track?
I think in this session you'd have to pick session 2. The track has already dropped 2 degrees from the start of the first session. Mostly cloudy. It's about 3:30 in game time now, so the track's just going to get faster and faster as we go. Obviously, as the rubber goes down in the first flying lap of the session, you might find a little bit of pace goes away as the track sort of heats up and rubbers up. But I think now that we're going to have this little 5-minute intermission, it's going to come back down again. It's already now 33. It's dropped another degree. So this thing should get faster and faster. I expect we'll probably see 27s from the quick guys in this run here.
Man, Jake calling out 27s. If no one does a 27, you're on watch from Jake. Let's go out there and say that. You got to put down the gauntlet. Let's see what these guys are doing. And while they get ready for that second session, we'll go to a quick short ad break from Logitech.
When I'm driving an F1 car, steering wheel feedback is one of the most important things. It helps me decide when to brake and how hard. It's how I feel the surface of the road. Every bump in the terrain, every wheel slip. It If my tyres are starting to lose grip, I can sense that immediately. When I'm driving in a sim, I need that same tactility, that level of detail I have in a real car.
Racing games have come a long way in the last 20 years. Nothing's really changed in how we approach force feedback in all that time. Cutting-edge sims are now so realistic, drivers across all disciplines are using them for training. Our main goal when designing True Force was to improve the number of sensations that you actually feel, to put you better in contact with the car that you're driving so that you can improve your performance and that enjoyment of driving on a track. The physical feedback needs to be more immediate or accurate, or a player loses immersion or control.
Game developers are still having to recreate their force feedback from a set library of effects instead of deriving it from real-time modelling.
True Force is special because it levels the playing field for PC and console gamers. You're now getting the extra level of precision and detail that you need, regardless of which platform is your choice. This is not just iteration, it's total evolution. True Force force feedback works differently. It hooks directly into the physics engine of the game. Games already calculate the forces on the tyres and the steering wheel. The True Force algorithm is able to process this data at up to 4,000 times.
And as we get ready, Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational, the second qualifying session here tonight for the first round of the qualifying series. 20 drivers make it into the main field, and here we go. The big boys are out, the top 22 that qualified into this series through pre-qualifying. And let's see whether they can knock off Josh Muggleton at the top as we look at Robert Gibbs. Quick straight away. Let's see what they can do. Job Stewart as well among these guys. There's a lot of drivers among this field, Sam, man, that we know are quick.
Absolutely. They're all hearts for re-racing. They're like, right, this is it, time to shine. You can see people setting, obviously, purple sectors with their first time out. But, you know, when they know what starts, the times they sort of start to put down, they'll get some sort of understanding of where they are in the field. And I guess a lot of these, and I guess we're kind of expecting that most of them may shoot straight to the top, but you just never know how this will play out.
You've got to remember is all those purple sectors that they are setting are up against Muggleton's time. So this is all still a part of the same session. Dylan O'Shea right now already setting a middle sector, a fastest middle sector that has been pipped as well as the rest of these guys come through the field. Riggs as well on screen right now for SSR. These guys are in a tight battle. You can see these guys are pushing straight out the box, Jake. There's no chill straight away.
No, definitely not. And I actually got my eyes on Rayhan at the moment. He was quickest in practice, I believe, and his lap looks pretty good so far. Whether he can stitch it all together by the end of this lap is yet to be seen, but first lap starting to come in now, Jake.
Yeah, as Robert Gibbs straight. Andrew Dyson now takes the top spot away. Good time, Dylan Rudd. Brian Ball goes to the top. They're flying up at the end. Lianic goes up. Scott to the top, Kuznetsov goes second, but where's Muggleton? He's outside the 10. These guys have just thrown down the gauntlet straight away. James Scott to the top by a tenth of a second, 27.7. Jake hit the money on the head with the lap time, Sam had, and it's hit James Scott, Kuznetsov, Brian Borg, Dylan Rudd, Ryan Lianic, setting himself up inside that top 5.
It was amazing, except for the top two. It was like 28.0, 28.0, 28.0. Everyone that crossed the line was 28.0. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how close it is. But yeah, obviously they punched out that 27.7. Jake knew it. He was right on the money there. So, and now it's back to these guys. They'll reset, new set of boots and try again to see if they can better it. But amazing, isn't it? How quickly Muggo went from P1 to now sitting in P12.
he would have thought he was on the moon. He's half a second off the top spot. And again, that's just where it is at the moment. You come out in a session, and does that also play a factor, Jake, where you don't have to... He was sitting top of the timesheet. Obviously, his consistency was brilliant to put 2 laps down in a 28.3, but does that also play on your mind of you don't have that extra person that goes out and throws a 27.7 out there that you go, okay, I need to gain half a second, and that throws him off a little bit?
A little bit. You might not be inclined to push quite as hard when you've got a tenth and a half over everyone else, but at the end of the day, I think track temp plays a pretty big factor here. Like, if you take a look at practice versus qualifying for pretty much everyone who's now in the top 10, they've all jumped 2 or 3 tenths. So I think that track temp has made a pretty big difference here. I think Muggo probably would have been a little bit more competitive if he was in this side of the session, but I guess where you finish in pre-qual does actually matter in this instance. So
yeah, it does. It definitely did. And like we always say the track temp is such a big thing, especially with the way the tyres hit up over the racetrack surface and the way the sun and how it all works in iRacing. It makes for that, just that added development in, as we say, as the track pulls off, the track is getting grippier, which means the times are going to get faster. And as we see, all of a 15-20 minute session, 25 minutes later, and the track time's 3/10 quicker than what it was at the start of the session. The field all came in, got a fresh set of boots, Sandman, and out they go again. This looks like this could be tight. Yes, all right, there's maybe a 10th to Kuznetsov between Scott. Brian Borg's another 10th back, but that middle field from 4th to 10th, there's this gap there that there's not much in it.
Yeah, and the beauty is for them is they know if they just find a tiny bit and they're all bunched together and you're at the bottom part of that section, you're going to jump those 5, 6, 7 cars that are all pretty much on the exact same time. So they'll be chasing for a 10th or half a 10th, and they know that they'll grab 5 or 6 spots. But yeah, it's all about how this track's going to change and what sort of lap they can lay down.
Yeah, this looks like Kenneth Ladder is going to actually come across some traffic. He's on an opening lap here. He obviously aborted his first lap, trying to see if he can get some lap in the second part. But here comes the rest of the field. Here we go. We've seen this before all season. And here we go again. 2023, nothing's changed. Qualifying traffic is always going to be a factor. He's gotten through a couple of cars right there. Now coming in that's Stenny on the outside. He's managed to make his way through there. What are these guys going to do? Is he going to block him? There's a little bit, but he sort of was running
outside. He could get draft.
No, it threw him off and in the pit lane, straight to the pit lane, roll out of that. I think it threw him off. Unsure who that was. Obviously, a new season, a whole bunch of new drivers. Liveries are all different. We'll get there at some stage. But yeah, just threw him off a little bit, and Kenneth Ladder rolled out, pulled it down the pit lane. I think that was the best spot for him to sort of get into that position in the sense, Sandman, because he could just bring it straight on the pit lane, get some fresh tyres and go again.
It's amazing. We touched on this last year that when you are one of those fast cars come along slower cars, you know everyone's going to get out of your way, but it's still distracting. How do you find it, Jake? You know, when you're in the driver's seat, you know that everyone around you is aware that you're, or most of them are usually aware that you are on a fast lap. They do get off the racing line, but I feel it's probably still a distraction.
Oh, 100%. And I got really burned at the Sandown round, if I recall correctly. Griffin and I both came up into a crash in the last corner. I think, unfortunately, it's just the risk you take by not finishing that first lap. And yeah, that definitely would have distracted him. I think some of the really quick drivers can get away with it. Like, if you remember, there was a big lap that I think Senna did at Monaco a few years ago, and he passed like 3 cars over the lap and still put a crazy lap together. But typically, especially with how sensitive the cars are on aero there, I definitely think Ken Ladder would have got a bit of push as well as a bit of distraction through that little kick there.
Yeah, it's just one of those areas where on the racetrack that you don't really want to come across traffic, but you can try and make it work, but it didn't work for him right now. Robert Gibbs moved himself in amongst that 28-0 bracket that we're talking about. There's like 7-8 cars in on it at the moment. Dylan Rudd improves, moves himself within 7,000ths of a second of the top spot. Sebastian Flop moves himself up into P4, but what a lap time from Dylan Rudd. McNamara now moves himself into P number 4. A lot of these guys, remember, were in the championship from last year, didn't make it into that top 20, Sandman. So we'll see some of those guys come back and try and make sure they can put a stamp and say, oh, no, I deserve that spot. I want to get back in.
Absolutely. The thing I've noticed too, this part of the racetrack is bathed in sunshine. At the start-finish line, you could see how much cloud cover there was. So different parts of the racetrack, this is where these guys will, so you can see, look at the difference there. So that little bit of cloud cover in certain parts of the racetrack is going to benefit these guys. Look at this.
Look at Miller Corner. Miller Corner's like in the darkness.
So this is where these guys want to have those fresh tyres and want to be on a good lap because they can benefit from that cloud cover.
You can see it right there. Look at the difference. Look at Miller Corner. There is nothing there. Siberia is baking in the sunlight. You see, it's just a cloud cover right over the middle of the racetrack at the moment. That is really a great shot from Luke, as always, putting it right where we need to. See, as you come up over Lukey Heights as well, a little bit of sunshine here. That's just going to hinder these guys on the lap, just raise that temperature at the moment. But still, James Scott, as they come around, most probably to come in to get 4 fresh tyres for the final part of this session. James Scott still on top. Dylan Rudd in P2, Rick Kuznetsov third with Sebastian Flock, Sean McNamara, sorry, and then Sebastian Flock rounding out the top 5. Stenberg just moved himself up on that last run inside, just outside, sorry, the top 10 in 11. As we look through a couple of these guys, as Job Stewart's on an outlap, and he's all the way down in 16th. Does that surprise you a little bit, Jake, in terms of where he is right now?
Yeah, I think the conditions are a little bit interesting at the moment. They seem to have got cold quite quickly. Like it's down to 32 on the track temp now. So I think the hypercloud is definitely a thing. And we saw it float over turn 1 and 2 a little while ago, and now it's sunny again. So sometimes it can just be a matter of timing. They talk a lot about it in top 10 shootouts when they race the real supercars, how big a difference that sort of 5-10 minutes can make. But in theory, the track is the coldest it's been all session right now. So in theory, if you put it all together, this should be the fastest point of the night.
You'd hope so, but right now, Stewart is going to have some traffic to deal with. Kenneth Ladder improves. He does move himself up into P number 17, gets that banker in. But Stewart's going to have all these guys that have just come out of pit lane to deal with. And if he can make his way around it, he just was in the shot. You just would have seen him at the back of Southern Loop as we look at Luke Mitchinson, who again was in the championship. Here is Job Stewart. He is on a lap. The rest of these guys right now, Sam, man, on an outlap, and Jake mentioned it earlier. This is what's gonna put him off down in the Miller corner. He gets past one. He's got another couple in front of him. One's going to move to the left-hand side. Another one to the right coming here into Siberia. Sam, man, this is not where you want to find traffic.
That's amazing. Oh, look at him. Oh, that's so close. Like that, he could have breathed the throttle a little bit there.
Yep.
We didn't see his throttle trace. You don't know. But me as a commentator, I still hold my breath for them because I know what sort of position they're in where they need to make this lap count. They are trying to feed through traffic. Thankfully, it hasn't gone too bad. Let's see how he goes here. But looks like he might be at a point where he may be able to sneak a little bit of a draft down that front straight. But as Jake touched on, you can get a bit of understeer as well, a bit of aero push when you start following up closely behind these guys.
Especially into this last sector. That's where you're going to get that aero push coming through the final corner. He's got Brian Borg in front of him, but he may benefit down the front straight. Job Stewart will most probably not get another lap time in unless he won't actually. I don't think he'll be able to get around, put some 4 fresh boots on. It does improve a little bit to P13, 3/10 off the top. I don't think he won't be too upset. We know he can race, but I think he'll be a little bit upset with that starting position. Looking further down through the field as we get set for these final lap times. No improvement then from Thomas Freeman. That's going to keep himself down in 28th position. As we look further up, Bradley Radu, he's going to come across the stripe, and that will be to get ready for their opening final laps. Dylan O'Shea, second sector, lit that one up, Sam, man.
Yeah, just to see how that finishes out. And I just keep seeing how some of these cars are moving around, and I'm like holding my breath thinking, geez, I hope they know that. See, they've got teammates, so I was just trying to see what sort of run he could get. You can see it moves a little bit on exit. It turns in nice, and if he can benefit a little bit, he'd love to be a little bit closer for that aero draft, but we'll see what sort of time it does.
And that's as well. Who's that behind him? That's Robert Gibbs as well in the number 2. That's an improvement in the last sector with the toe. Gibbs moves himself up into P number 3. Beautiful. That's a good lap time, but not much. 2400ths to separate himself from first to third, and there's 500 separating the top 4, Jake. That's a tight session as we come down to the final minute and a half.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good indication of how this race is going to go, to be honest. If you can have 5 guys all within a few hundredths, that's pretty phenomenal. I just noticed Joe Stewart tried for another lap then, which was a little bit interesting. And he actually probably balked Rayhan a little bit there, which is a bit of a shame because Rayhan's actually done 3 laps in this session, every one of them within 200. So had he not been balked, then he might have actually been able to jump up, possibly even the top 3.
That's all he needed. That's the window of the 28.0s. As Scott, there was a fastest final sector, but no improvement to James Scott's time at the top of the tree. He's still provisional pole with less than 30 seconds on the clock. But that window, like you said, Leonard was one of those people that had a 28.0. He did the 28.030. In front of him, Sebastian Fokker on 28.002. And then the next 3 cars behind him also, that's Dyson Briggs Ratu, they're all on a 28.0 as well. There's not much in this session, Sam, man. 10 seconds left. I don't think there's anyone really lighting up the timesheet. They all just did basically their final run, unless someone was on the alternate strategy. Like we said, Joe Stewart was on that alternate strategy. It didn't really pay out for him. We do know Kenneth Ladder was on a lap, but pardon me, he just did one before, which moved himself up just outside that top 20 at the moment in 21st. Here comes Stenberg. Will he bring it down the pit lane? That looks like that car's coming straight in the pit lane, Sam, and I think that's going to be the end as one of the SSR cars. Hayden Bell goes a little bit rallycross moment out of the last corner, and I think that'll be the end of the first qualifying session for the qualifying series, and these guys all coming down the pit lane. What a session, Sam, man. That sets us up for a good race this afternoon.
Absolutely. And, yeah, for the times to be as close as they are, I guess we kind of expected it with the field of drivers that we've got. But, man, to see those times in quality, that just shows what sort of cracking race we're going to have, because we know how effective the draft is around here. So if you get sort of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars all drafting together, this is going to be some good pack racing. So I'm really keen to see how this plays out. But boy, have they got their work cut up for them, because it's a decent race distance, and we've got to throw in some pit stops as well.
45 laps ahead of us for the opening round of the qualifying series for the Logitech G Supercars Pro Invitational here at Phillip Island. And it's going to be one of those ones where it's going to be a long race, but it's going to be split up. 2 compulsory pit stops here tonight that these guys are going to have to factor into their race. And once again, we will get it all started very soon, and we'll run through that grid as the end of the qualifying session comes up. And Jake, how do you feel about that qualifying session? Like you said, the field is super tight. Is that going to be some good racing?
I think so. I think the problem you have here at Phillip Island with this Gen 2 car is how like badly they're affected by aero. If you're behind one car, it's bad, but if you're behind 2 cars, it's terrible. So I think if you're the likes of sort of Robert Gibbs, Rick Kuznetsov, etc., you're probably going to consider maybe a bit of a fuel save, and then try go a bit longer in that first stint, get a little bit more in the tank, and then sort of try and use that to your advantage late in the race. I think really interesting sort of strategy race, having these 2 little fills gives you the opportunity to sort of take more earlier, see what happens, etc., etc. But yeah, going to be a tough one to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it will be as we bring up that qualifying results as the cars head to the grid. James Scott, Dylan Rudd rounded out that front row, 7 thousandths of a second between the top 2. Not much amongst the rest of them. Gibbs, Kuznetsov, Borg, McNamara, Flott, Leonage, Dyson and Briggs rounds out the top 10 with the rest of the results on your screen as we will go through the grid very shortly and get set as we will bring those up. So Scott Rudd off that front row of the grid. Then it's Robert Gibbs, Kuznetsov, row 2 with Brian Borgshaw, McNamara, Sebastian Flock, Rehan Leonage, and Andrew Dyson, Adam Briggs rounding out row number 5. On the outside, it will be Bradley Ratu and Kurt Stenberg, row 12. Only 3 tenths off for Stenberg, and you're down in 12th. That's how tight this session was. 13th and 14th, Damian Johnstone with Job Stewart alongside him as well. He'll be looking to fight through Matthew Bowler, Dylan O'Shea, Hayden Fell, Luke Mitchison, Josh Muggleton. Opening session provisional pole down in 19th. That's how much those guys threw down the gauntlet in that second session. Like we said, the track temp did get colder and those guys had a really good session. Thomas Freeman will line up alongside him as we look through the rest of the field. Bradley Vaughan down in 30th. I think he'll be wanting to improve a little bit. Zach Hanlon as well down in 33rd. Sam, man, how do we take this one as we get ready for the opening round of the qualifying series?
Well, now the good thing for these drivers, they just put all that quality session right behind them now. They know where they are on track. They know who they've got around them. And now it's just making sure you drive smart, especially like we touched on. It's a long race. So the last thing you want to do is get caught up in something silly at the start. Just benefit from where you are, make the most of any opportunities, but don't put yourself in a silly situation. And I guess it's probably easier said than done, isn't it, Jake? When those, when the green flag drops and the visor comes down, it's so easy to get excited and carried away.
Something that's also important to remember, Sandman, is this is the first race of the year. A lot of these guys might have done, a Daytona 24 or something like that, but this is probably the first time in a couple of months that these guys have, engaged their handbrake, taken this thing off the line, tried to get the power to the floor. A lot of that sort of rustiness needs to be shaken off, and I think the experienced people will probably shake it off a little bit better. I'm expecting to see a pretty good start from the likes of James Scott. Dylan Rudd, I think he's a bit of a Phillip Island specialist, to tell you the truth, and I mean that in the kindest way possible. So I think the race up front could be good, but it's also important to remember that you really just got to finish in the top 25.
How's that shot? Look how many cars are on grid. Like, that looks incredible. So imagine the poor guys down the back of the pack, but they look forward and think, geez, I've got my work cut out for me tonight.
That's a long way to be starting all the way back there. It's going to be a long night for all of them. But here we go. Scott, Rudd, front row. Gibbs, Kuznetsov, row 2. Borg, McNamara on row number 3. It's the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational, round 1 of the qualifying series here from Phillip Island. And we are away for the opening race of the year, and it is a great job from James Scott on the pole position. He is going to lead him down into turn number 1. It looks like we got a clean start among the field, unlike we did last year, but it's all down into turn number 1, and it is clean so far through turn number 1. There's a couple of guys running off wide. There's one car sideways in the back. You don't want to run through the grass because it's hard to rejoin at the southern loop. I think we've got a couple of cars just jostling for position, especially on an outside as everyone tries to rejoin. But right now, Scott out in front, Sandman.
No, that was good. I was looking back. There was, I think it was Stenberg back there in the TTR Commodore. Like, he looked like very close to the dirt, and I thought he was going to have an excursion, but he managed to hold it all together. But look at these group of cars, 3 and 4 wide. Some off on the gravel. Someone's gone wide there. They just couldn't quite pull it up. Oh, man.
I believe that was Talianchik that had to run wide at Miller Corner. There was a couple of cars lucky brakes on the inside. I was a little bit worried there could have been a couple of cars spearheading the field, but so far we are clean through the rest of the field. Don't want to see an opening lap safety car. This is the part of the stage where it gets dicey through the field. People trying to sort themselves out, trying to gain the positions because they know they can. The opening laps where you can catch someone napping, isn't it, Jake? And as we say that, Mitchelson down the inside of Bowler into turn 10. There's a couple of guys now, the rest of the field just goes defensive.
That's it. It's going to be a hell of a race up the front, I think. It's starting to think strategy for these top 5, and I've just seen Josh Muggleton has actually come down into pit lane, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. He had a ripper. I hope that's not a penalty, and I hope he's just taking it early.
Could that be? It could be get rid of the tick box, get rid of that one of those compulsory pit stops as Mitchelson down the inside. He's not close enough to get the job done into one. That's a Shea in front of him. Oh, he dabbed the brake, just trying to get that car settled in the wake of the draft. But yeah, hopefully you're right, Jake. Hopefully that's not like a jump start. He could have just rolled off the handbrake and rolled it in, and that's all it takes. With a couple of other people on pit lane as well, Hanlon and Loxton, it looks like are the other two as we get through. James Scott holding it down, but Dylan Rudd, he said he could be a bit of a specialist. Let's see what he can do. And Sandman, it looks like this is going to be a pretty tough race out in front.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these guys will just try and keep a level head, especially these first couple of laps. Let the nerves settle down. They know they've got themselves in a decent position. What you do, you just want to stay in touch with the group of cars that you're around. You know, you've got different strategies that are going to play out. Like you said, hopefully that's just an early pit stop strategy for Muggleton, because I worry that, I think this place is probably a little bit aggressive on tyres. If he's going to try and go longer as far as, making those tyres go the distance, is that going to be a bit of a tough gig for him, Jake, as far as trying to get that tyre survival?
100%. I think Supercars E-Series last year, there was a pretty interesting call by Dane Warren to actually make a move like that, and it just didn't work for him at all. It doesn't really matter how fast you are. The one thing I will say is Mugro was, I think, quite out of position for his pace, so it might just be a straight call to just get out of traffic, get some clear running, make sure he's not in a crash, and just sort of see what happens. It might work his way, but historically, I don't know if that was the best move.
Yeah, and the good thing is too, like we said, that we don't know how this race is going to play out. There may be a safety car a little bit later, but Muggo in by himself, like you said, if he's back in the pack, he's getting held up, he can just punch out some decent laps in clear air. So it'll be a good strategy to see how that plays out come the end of the race.
Yeah, for sure. I think it can work. You've just got to have a pretty special set of circumstances for it to work. The issue you have is if you have a safety car in the first, say, 15 laps of the race, you're pretty much forced to take your second stop, and then you've got an absolute hell to get through to the end of the race. So fingers crossed Muggo plays out for him. I really want to see him up the front, but I think Dylan Rudd's in the whole shot at the moment. He's the one who can save some fuel and then try and overcut with his strategy.
I think that's definitely the position I think I'd want to be in, just following the leader, letting the leader just control the field. Obviously, he's going to be using all the fuel he can out in front. But I was just like, I can just feather the throttle down and save a little bit here, save a little bit there. It's always better when you're following a guy in front as well. You can pick your braking marker off them. You can control your speed off of them. And just make sure no one behind, like Robert Gibbs or Brian Borg, decides they want to have a fun little party out in front. But like we said, they've all got to just make sure that they're inside that top 20 in points to be able to qualify for this championship. And at the moment, these guys basically just sitting 1, 2, and 3. So we get the visor cam out from Luke. A wonderful shot that we will have all year long. There's Robert Gibbs in the ERT Mustang, currently sitting in P number 3, Sandman, doing a good job and just sitting there as it gets a little bit twitchy on exit, but no real worry aboard the Mustang.
Absolutely. I love this shot because it really gives you an indication of how that car is behaving, how aggressive they are in their braking zones, how they're getting on the throttle. You watch that steering input and how much correction they're having to put in, or if any. So thankfully off there was no correction, but a really good indication, especially as this race goes on, about how these cars and how their setups are behaving just from this visor cam. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's a great shot. As Robert Gibbs just running us through the motions of Miller Corner, Siberia, coming up to Lukey Heights, and James Scott still out in front. Their top 3 sort of started to separate themselves, haven't they, Jake? And is that just they've just got a little bit more pace over Brian Borg at the moment, or do you think Brian Borg could just be checking it up a little bit?
To be honest, I think James Scott's just really fast. I think he's just pulling everyone along at the moment. Dylan Rudd, I ran on board with him last lap, and he doesn't look to be saving any fuel. I think he's throwing everything at James Scott to try and stay in the tow. He did have pretty good tyre life in a race I watched him in not long ago, so hopefully he hangs there. But at the moment, I think James Scott's just in a class of his own, to be honest.
Yeah, he's doing a mega job out in front of us. Kuznetsov goes for the move on Brian Borg down into turn number 1. Position gain done into turn number 1. Kuznetsov up to P4, Borg down to P number 5. And let's see if Kuznetsov can gain. He was quick in the qualifying series, in the main series last year. He did show some flashes of brilliance and was able to get himself in around that bubble spot, just wasn't able to continue into the championship. Obviously 20 cars is a tight field to make it when you've got such a stacked field like we did last year, Sandman, and now he's going to try and do it all again to get himself in. But he's got now that move done. Try and see if he can close that gap to the top 3 in front.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these guys in the top 10 or so, they're going to play a pretty level-headed race, I think, all a little bit side by side action here. You see how much that car twitched and how much he was able to benefit. So got the job done, and that's a position change. But yeah, these guys that are already in top 10, I think they'll be okay for round 1 if they sort of see that where they're at, because it's obviously early stages over this 4-race calendar for this qualifying series. We go to a Logitech Supercars replay. Now watch this. That car moves a little bit on exit. He's already starting to look to the inside. It's power down and gets the job done. That's a nice, easy one. It's almost gifted to you when the car steps out for you sideways. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, he just showed his nose to the outside, made Bundy Radu think, okay, I'll just a little bit of defend. But as he ran wide to the middle of the corner, it stepped out, like you said, Sam, and Joe was like, well, I've just set myself up for the best exit I can, and around I go, and that was easy done. So good job there from Job Stewart, 2 ERT Commodore, Mustang and a Commodore, of Flock and Bowler inside that top 15 as these guys running around just outside that top 10, and hopefully they can try and push up now on Bradley Ratu, just at that position. Dylan O'Shea, we saw him lay down some quick lap times in qualifying, Jake. You shocked to see him down in 16th at the moment?
Yeah, I think he smashed it out of the box pretty quickly, not too bad, but then struggled to improve. So he looks like he's going for a bit of a move at the moment. Just about gets it done.
It's there.
Almost.
It's there. he's like, I'm not going to give this one up that easy. It's bowler to the inside.
Hey, touch.
There's a little bit of contact, door-to-door. Bowler's not going to give this one up. Good fighting, good, hard, aggressive racing to the inside and the outside. Will Dylan be able to hold on? Oh, they're side by side. A good defensive drive from Bowler to keep that position. But yeah, what a drive from those two.
Yeah, the risk you sort of take by having a move into Honda as he now gets bombed back. He doesn't make the same mistake this time, finishes it off. I was just going to comment, the risk you take having a move into Honda is if you don't get it done, it leaves you open to basically running side by side, just hemorrhaging time. Take a look at how far away Sebastian Flock was compared to about half a lap ago. He's absolutely gapped these two guys.
Yeah, he has. He's gained a good second and a half, 1.2 seconds at the stripe between that. So that puts himself in the phase now of the race where he can go, okay, I don't have to worry about who's behind me. It was my teammate, but I've got that gap now. As you can see, that gap's gone through the roof between himself and Bowler, and now he can just focus on Bradley Ratu in front and try and game while the rest of them behind him. Got a bit of a freight train starting to form after that little bit of a battle. And Sam, man, this is what we said. We said this all of last year through the whole of the 2022 series. We're seeing you to get in the qualifying series. No matter where you are in this field, there will always be a hard-fought battle over 20th to 1st.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of the series is that everyone is passionate. Everyone's a good driver. And it's like you said, you almost need like 3 or 4 directors. I feel sorry for Luke sometimes because there's so much action happening on the track. And regardless of whether you're first or last, there's always good battles. And mate, if this is what we're seeing in the qualifying series, imagine what they're all going to bring to the table when we kick off the actual series in proper for round 1. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be one of those series that I think will go to another level. We said last year it was already at that level, it was already high caliber. The drivers in it were once again obviously all invited. It was that top level driving, and I think it'll go to that next step again this year, and I can't wait to get it started. And we start off with a qualifying series, none other best way to get the little bit of a taste to what we can expect for the rest of the year. But Brian Ford currently in P number 5, Sean McNamara, he's all over that Mustang. And Jake, where do you think he could try and set him up for? Pardon me, we said obviously Honda Miller corner, that's where they can, but it opens that self up for a position at Siberia. You can maybe set yourself Lukey Heights down into MG. Is that where you expect a lot of these positions to maybe come from?
Yeah, well, the difficult thing about Phillip Island, as I said before, so many of the corners sort of inflect. They go one way and then the other, which means if you don't get the move done, you can end up on the outside going into the next one. So you really want to get the moves done at some of the tighter corners, so your Hondas and MGs. The only issue is you've got pretty high speed, high downforce dependent corners leading into them. So if you're following someone like Brian Borg, like Sean McNamara is at the moment, you're sort of really battling with aero push on a level they aren't. Look at the understeer it had just through Hayshed there. You can't get a move done. So to be honest, I know not everyone agrees with this kind of racing, but you got to get into them a bit, loosen them up, get a run, and then try and get your move done. Because at the moment, he's just going to sit there. He's either got to save fuel or get past him.
It's touring car racing. If the doors aren't coming off or getting beaten and banged on, then what are we doing? This is touring car. This is the elite level of touring car racing, especially here in Australia. You expect a little bit of the door bang. Some people don't like it, but that is racing. I think we've all got to accept that. I think we can all accept that. If we go to NASCAR, it's just every weekend they do that. So I guess we've got to open up ourselves a little bit. But we look a little bit further back. Kenneth Latta down in P number 19, Sam, and he's actually made up some decent ground in terms of the 2 spots at the moment. Bailey Fripp behind him has gained 7. A lot of these guys starting to work their way up from a back qualifying.
Yeah, and now what they're all starting to think about is pit stops. They'll be talking to their teams. They'll already have some sort of idea in their mind of when they're going to pit, but they'll all be starting to think about that pit stop and ticking one of those boxes. And what do we think, Jake, as far as you being in the driver's seat? What are you thinking? Maybe around lap 15 or so?
Wow, 15's the logical one. You split the race in two, or rather in three. But what's really interesting at the moment is the pace of Josh Muggleton. It's just not there. Like, if you look at James Scott at the front, I think he ran a 29.7 last time by. The cars that Muggo was racing before he pitted, they're running 29.7s. If you look at Kenneth Latta, he only did a 30.0 last lap. So this is not going to pay off for him. I think he's struggling a bit with the balance of that car, but I think typically you do want to overcut at a track like this, especially if you can save some fuel. But this is sort of showing that maybe the one lap overcut isn't the way to go.
And is that maybe part and parcel of missing out a little bit on that draft that some of these guys are sharing in these groups?
That's possible, but at the end of the day, for Muggo at the moment, he's got no toe, he's not gaining any time in clear air, and he's using more fuel in clear air. So that's pretty much gone like a bit of a nightmare for him. I think he does look like he's struggling with the balance of that thing, as it looks like Dyson's in the lane now.
Yeah, Andrew Dyson, one of the first of the top bunch sort of to come down into pit lane. And yeah, it's definitely looking like he's struggling, isn't it, Jake? And is that something that's just the driver, obviously, you would know that, and by coming back to TCR, it's one of those things that they've always got a decent set underneath them. Is that just obviously maybe the driver preference is just not there for him at the moment?
I don't know. He's just, it's a bit out of character for Muggo, to be honest. He just looks like he's really battling to keep that thing straight. And we've got a car off the road.
That's Hayden Veld off the road at Miller Corner and touches the wall. Just a drift tap, just a wall tap. It's fine. It's only the left rear quarter panel. It'll be all right. He gets it back going, gets it back onto the racetrack. Just watch the rejoin, and as he does that, he comes back out in between. I believe that Borg and Blackburn it is. So puts himself in that little window. Now he's got to regain that composure. And one thing, Jake, as well, how do you regain after making a mistake? Because it beats on you. You said it in qualifying, you make that mistake, try and gain 2/10 back in the next corner by braking 20 metres deeper, which is never going to happen. Is that same sort of mindset comes in after you make a mistake like that?
I think you just got to sort of put your head down and just drive normally. Don't try and chase margins back. Don't get the reg miss. It's a really hard thing to do. It's really easy to say in practice, but yeah, just put your head down and focus and try and recover. Just get the tyres back in, because the other thing is when you've just been off the road or just been turned around, the tyres are a million degrees. The car's not going to drive how you want it to. Just get yourself back in that rhythm. And we were talking about Josh Muggleton a second ago. He's actually just dropped out of the server. So that's absolute disaster for Muggo. And I actually got told by someone just then as well, Muggo did have a penalty off the start. So he wasn't, facing the overcut. He did have a drive-through for a jump start. So that's a nightmare first round for him.
Yeah, that is a nightmare first round. We mentioned at the start, there is no drop rounds. It's 4 rounds. You have to be good in all 4 rounds, top 20. Make sure you get into that championship. And he's going to be very disappointed with the way his opening round has gone. But McNamara has got the job done on Borg. Oh, Rian Lianage on the inside. I always get scary when the 2 cars go side by side through A-Shed. It's always one of those parts of Phillip Island. You go, these guys, Borgie's going to try and squeeze him over to the right-hand side. Another one down the inside as well. That's Johnston getting a little bit of a hip and shoulder out. Stenberg's now going to go on the outside. Is he going to get this position done? Here he goes. No, pitting does Damian Johnston down onto pit lane. It was Stewart that gave the hip and shoulder out to get the job done. He's been making up steady ground as he keeps going for another lap. Bradley Ratsu now all over the back at Stenberg. It's starting to liven up inside this top 10, Sandman, before pit stops. As I believe we have just lost Sandman for a little bit there as we come back through, but it is heating up, isn't it, Jake? Is this what happens when you all get under the mist? You see one guy go off and you go again. We said about the red mist, but this looks like these guys are just fighting hard before this pit stop window.
Yeah, the tyres are also starting to go away a little bit as well. It's not a super cold track, so the tyres are going to wear, and the deg is high here at Phillip Island, which I think is also why you're seeing a lot of guys pull the trigger really early. I'm shocked that we've had this many cars in pit lane and it's only lap 11. Like, typically you want to go longer in your first stint, so I'm really fascinated to see the outcome of these guys like your Kurt Stenbergs, like your Job Stewarts, etc., who are going a little bit longer in this one.
It's one of those things that we did talk about it off air, where we were like, how is this going to play out? We all talked about the tire deck so high here, and with the temp, obviously, we all thought that was going to be, play it how it goes, one person pit, you're coming, but they are making those second and third stints really long than what they really need to be, I guess, in terms of where they are on the track. James Scott, obviously running long, he's got clear air. He doesn't need to worry about what's going on behind him. He can just run his own rate. Dylan Rudd, same thing. He's actually keeping up with Scott out in front, Jake. I know we said he's been pushing hard. Obviously, I don't think there will be fuel saving, and I don't think he will be looking at any of that in terms of his speed out in front. But him and Gibbs, they kept their noses clean and kept up with him, I think, a lot better than I think we both thought.
Yeah, as I said, when I watched that, well, rather I was participating in it actually, that race with Dylan Rudd a little while ago, he had really good deck. He actually started to haul me back in the later part of the race, so I think he'll definitely, I don't think he's fuel saving, but just by being behind another car means you're pulling your brake markers back, using a little less fuel. If he can stay on James Scott here, there's definitely a strategic advantage to it, and I think we may actually have Sandman back now, Jake.
I am, yeah. Sorry, Mr. Blackall, left you there out in the cold, but I had a bit of a technical glitch this side, but thankfully we're all back and running, so I haven't missed too much.
Oh, that's all right. We're allowed to have some of those. We've got a lot of season ahead. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of those, and obviously I'm not going to be here for some of it due to my new job, unfortunately, which is going to suck just a little bit because I'm going to miss some of the action, but I will be back for most of the season, and I do look forward to getting that season underway when we do get going. But at the moment, James Scott out in front, doing a good job, and Brian Borg, he is now fighting with Aaron Borg further down the field. These guys obviously have made that first round of pit stop, Sandman. Now they're going to try and not get into a fight, and I feel like that's one of the situations you can get stuck into right now. You come in, you are fighting all these other guys out in front of you, aren't you, Sandman? And then come down the pit lane and you're fighting another car that you really don't want to be fighting.
Absolutely, and not get caught up in the battle too much, because we've already seen a couple of cars that go off the racetrack, and the last thing you want to do is make that little mistake, because it's so hard to make all that ground back up. Yes, you might not hit the wall and the car will be straight, but it's those crucial seconds that you lose, and trying to gain that back in these races is too tough because the field is so strong. So you just want to be able to have pretty much a nice clean race and not get yourself caught up in anything silly, because an off track here can be crucial.
And that's exactly right. It's one of those phases where it's so difficult when you get in a pack like it is right now. There are so many cars that are so tight together. You make one little error, put yourself back into that battlefield of I don't need to be here. I wasn't fighting you earlier on. You've put less fuel in than me, or you put more fuel in than me. Like, why are we here? Why are we doing this? You need to sort of just get it going and move on forward. Brian Borg is the first car with a pit stop. Aaron Borg hasn't stopped yet. He is currently in P11. The rest of the field after that has come down onto pit lane and done their first round of pit stops. But again, this is another thing, Jake, as well. I'm gonna bring it to you in terms of how do you manage that fuel? Obviously, you just put the fuel on and don't worry about it and just take tires for the whole race. Is there a benefit to trying? Because obviously, I think it's 18 seconds of tires, so you can get a little bit of. I think it's I don't know how many liters. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've stopped the car. But you do the fuel and tires and just underfuel it every time and just put in enough fuel to cover enough fuel where the tires cover it.
Well, in these two pit stop races, the way that I normally like to do it is throw a heap more in the first stop than in the second.
Yep.
And the reason for that is if you get a safety car in between those two pit stops, if you've got more in, it's basically a free advantage, to be honest. But, when you got really talented strategy guys who have got spotters and stuff like that, Jared Philcell, I think, was the master of this last season in these two strategy races. You're just fuel to what everyone else has got. So if you're in the case of James Scott, you got a bit of a lead. You might see Dylan Rudd pit, see how long he stopped for. Just stop for the same amount of time. Make sure that you take some more fuel and still come out in front. That's how you want to do it ideally, but not everyone has access to a spotter, obviously. So, typical rule: throw a heap more in that first stop, and then fuel to the end in the second stop.
I think that's what a lot of these guys will be sort of looking to do, hopefully, if they can get it done. But this is going to be a little bit Dyson down the inside of Borg down into Miller Corner. And Borg right out sideways on the exit, lit up the rear tyres, trying to get down. He is on old rubber, mind you. These two around him right now are on fresh tyres, have got their stop done. and you just saw it, just got on the power just that little bit earlier, did Borg. As we look at Brian Borg, but behind him, Aaron Borg, there he goes. Oh, just lit it up on the exit as Dyson made that position. And again, he's just trying to fight. He's just trying to hold on. He's trying to stretch his stint out as long as he can, isn't he, Sam, man? While all these guys on fresh rubber, like, we just want to make moves. Like move out of our way. We got a race to fight.
Absolutely. Looks good on the racetrack. Doesn't look good on the stopwatch.
As it always does as we look through Stenberg, Gibbs on pit lane, Mitchelson and Van Del so far coming down on the pit lane, and see where they slot in. Clayton with a little bit of right front damage as he's made up a bunch of spots, still not stopped as he's got Brian Borg. Again, the first of those guys that have come down on the pit lane. Stenberg's dropped himself a fair way down this order, mind you. I think that's a bit of maybe a little bit more fuel, I think, there, Sam, man, on board Stenberg, because he's dropped just outside the top 15.
Yeah, and it's amazing how this part plays out when everyone's going for that first round of stops, because you look at the field spread, it's massive at the moment. I mean, I know there's still some people that are still yet to stop, but I guess the spread is probably a little bit more than I expected, being in the early stages of the race, being lap 16. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all starts to play out when everyone else starts to have their pit stops.
And no safety cars, mind you. We haven't had the Logitech G Aston Martin safety car come out yet. Keyword, yet. I'm not going to jinx it, because I tried that at Sandown. It didn't work, and it never happened. So we went 161 laps without one. So I'm going to hopefully not jinx it this time. But McNamara comes down from inside that top 5. He's going to come onto pit lane and get his first round of service. Obviously, 2 compulsory pit stops here tonight, 45 laps. We have 17 laps into the books already, Jake. Does it just click down that quick inside your head as well, or is that just one of those things where it takes even longer when you're out there?
I think it sort of depends on the scenario. I think if you're leading the race, it feels really long. If you're sitting 27th and need to get in that top 25, it's gonna take a while. But a man who is not going slow at all at the moment is James Scott. He has gapped Dylan Rudd in this last couple of laps before pitting, probably trying to pull a bit of margin and maybe try and make sure that he's got that extra lap or so he can go a bit longer. How's the consistency? The last 6 laps, all within half a tenth. This guy's flying.
I was going to bring that up too. He has been consistent. As soon as he sort of had that gap to run, we mentioned it. It was like half a second. It was in that window that I said that, oh yeah, they've kept up with him. Nah, he just said, I'm going. That's it. I'm done. And he just punched out 29 fives. Just because he can. And the consistency is there, and he's doing a good job of it, Sam, man. This could be one to watch. We know how good James Scott is, obviously in Scops, etc. And he's showing it right now in the qualifying series as well, Sam, man.
Absolutely, and consistency is key, especially as these tyres get older. So when you're pulling those consistent times as the deg starts to get worse and worse, that's key, and that's crucial. And that's, like we touched on, that's why he's starting to pull away with that little bit of margin. And he knows it is at the point now is whatever rubber he's got left, he can use it up because he knows he's pitting soon.
Oh, Stenberg, big dive down the inside into Bowler. I think that was a little bit of sideways from Matthew Bowler on the exit, and he's going to get that position done. Stenberg moves himself up to P number 15. Again, he only just came down on the pit lane, so expected to have a little bit of fresher rubber as he moves himself up. As Aaron Hall comes down onto pit lane, he's going to drop down the order after his first stop. These guys roughly 40 seconds back. Look at how close the pack is, Sam, man. You're looking through the field. It is so tight. The field is so tightly congested and compact together. There is a lot of battles as we look at Thomas Hinds now, right behind Dylan O'Shire, and see what he can do this time around. He has a little look to the inside of Southern Loop, going to try and run that ultra wide middle exit, get the run on the power down into Stoner Corner and then Miller Corner, see if he can make a move. But it's so congested in this pack, Sam, man.
Yeah, when it starts bunching up like this, and especially like where we touched on where Stenny's just had his pit stop, so he's got those fresh tyres, you do sort of smile a little bit. It's like if you start to come out around drivers and you've got the fresh rubber, it's like beauty, I can attack. But you don't want to attack too much and tear up the tyres because you still want them to go the distance.
Yeah, and that's one thing as well. You'll know this better than anyone of us, Jake, driving this car. It is that if you take the tyres out too early and just blow the heat out of them, it's basically done because you can't get that temperature down. It's so hard now. The tyres are so temperature dependent. As soon as you blow them up in sense of temp, it's hard to get that down.
That's it, and it's something Shane Van Gisbergen's really good at in the real supercars. He can still have a good bit of pace in the first half of his stint, but then in the second half he just walks away with it. As it looks like we got, I think that's Dyson making a pretty easy move on Borgie there. I think Borgie is probably an example of someone who had a bit of traffic at the start of his stint straight out of the pits and is now suffering. He hasn't been faster all stint since leaving pit lane than James Scott, who's on lap 19 of his tyres. So yeah, it's really going to punish you if you go hard too early.
And I think that as well, like you were saying, he was in the traffic. He was pushing so hard to make ground up that he knew, I have fresh tyres. I need to get around these slow guys to try and make, I shouldn't say slow guys, no one's slow. But when someone's on old tyres and you're on fresh boots, you have that mindset of these guys aren't on the same set of rubber that I am. I should be blowing them away. So I think that was sort of the aspect of where he thinks, no, I need to make sure that I gain these spots back, blew the tyres off it, and now he's struggling at that. But Sam Man, that he's got to try and make up that ground.
Yeah, and the bit that I love, the position that James Scott is in, he's fast, he's pulling away, and what he can do is extend that pit stop, because if he's thinking, I might come into lap 15, it's now lap 20. And the way he's going, he's pulling that margin still, he's got good pace, he can probably stretch it out to lap 25. So, you know, it's beautiful the way the car's behaving for him, and he's in a position where he's really got strategy to play with, where others are sort of relying on strategy to use a bit of that car pace.
That's exactly what's going on here. Stenberg down the inside of Clayton. He's going to make that move. Clayton's on a lot of damage to that right front of that Commodore. As the rest of these guys are fighting on the inside. They're going to be going, look at this, bump drafting, NASCAR style down into turn one as they come down to ERT cars on the outside. Going to get the job done. Fock, his try has got the job done. Bowler now looking to get that position done, and he has done so. But again, like you touched on, he is just pulling out that gap. Now he can do whatever he wants to. Mitchelson as well. He's going to make up that position. Obviously, Clayton on old tyres, just running around trying to gain as much as he can. But you mentioned it, old tyres, he's stretching out this run. It's lap 20. If the safety car comes out, it could put him in a little bit of a bad position, because of obviously you need to do 2 compulsory pit stops. A lot of these guys that have done one can just tick that box off at the next safety car and then go from there. I don't know whether that would be something I'd take factor of. I don't know whether you'd be thinking of that too, Jake, now with the way the battle packs are starting to form in terms of these guys on fresh rubber and old rubber in terms of their stints. Is that something you try and think of, okay, we need to get this done, because if a safety car comes out now while the rest of them are fighting, we could be out?
Yeah, I think you're sort of getting to the edge of where I'd probably want to take the stop if I'm James Scott now, but ultimately at the moment he probably feels invincible, because no one who's taken tyres is gaining anything on him. He's got no threat from behind. He's just sitting there pumping out 6s every lap. So he's probably got to think about coming down the lane the next lap or two. But I think this has really set him up nicely. There's something to be said about the psychology as well of the overcut and the undercut. I guess when you do the overcut like this, you're the hunter. Even if you lose a spot, you've got all these tyres that you can chase someone back with, whereas you get that short-term gain of an undercut, you're getting chased for the whole rest of the race.
Yeah, that's what Shea is experiencing right now. McNamara down the inside to turn one, not too hard. Looks like he's going to get that job done quite easily and move himself up into P number 18. Now he's got Thomas Hinz in front of him to try and gain another spot and move himself up further through the field. Looking a little bit Bailey Frid in P number 20. Thomas Freeman right behind him as well, with Jamie Dyke, who obviously competed last season as well for Fishy Motorsports. As we look further back, Hayden Veld, who obviously had that mistake early on, Sam Man, and he was off the road as a couple of cars up the front come down the pit lane. He's trying to regain sort of those positions that he lost as well. Beacott with a lot of damage on his car. But Sam Man, a couple of these guys out in front. Dylan Rudd, Kuznetsov down on the pit lane. And as I say that, we cut away and Beacock's had a moment out of the southern loop. I'm sure he would have regathered that. We'll keep that on the edge. Back later. He did. He's fine. He's all right. As we go to a replay of this, and it was just there it was, just loose on the exit, got on the power too early, and moved game and kept going like nothing happened.
Yeah, we had that wiggle, and then the next wiggle happened on the grass, and that's when you can hold your breath like, oh my goodness. But no, he did a good job. So these leaders, I reckon now that Gibson that have stopped, I reckon you'll see Scott in Sorry, not Gibbs. But
Rudd.
now I reckon, yeah, Rudd, you'll see that Scott will probably pit this next lap because he did have, I think it was out to 2.5, nearly 3 seconds
Yeah.
by the time they made their stop. So I would pretty much suggest, and like you touched on, you're still going to make 2 stops. So you don't want to leave it too late and get caught out. I reckon you'll see him fire into pit lane right now.
It's interesting. Rudd and Kuznetsov come down pit lane. Rudd was basically second the entire stint. And I'm going to throw this to you, Jake, because this is 14th and 15th. They come out in the pit, like after the cycle. They haven't lost that much time. I'm not like overthinking this, that they've just lost a bunch of time because they were only a second away from Scott. You thinking they've just overfilled this stop?
Well, I mean, you've gone longer than a lot of the other guys in the first stint, so you're probably going to put some more fuel in there anyway, which could be a big part of it. Also, I don't think anyone's quite on James Scott's level at the moment. I think those two probably will fall into the clutches of the undercutters a little bit more. But yeah, I think I agree with Sam, and James Scott's probably want to come down in the next lap or so. But there's also something to be said about the sort of 1 or 2 lap overcut when you're in his position. It's, hey, I just gapped you. Hey, I'm going to come down to the pits later than you and have better tyres for the whole rest of the race. It's a real slam in the face for everyone else, and it sort of feels like you've won before the race is already over.
He's very much doing that before these guys even do their second stops. Everyone's going to be coming down around the second stop, and he's going to have his first one basically done, and most probably going to come out maybe roughly ahead of the field for his second stop. At the moment, he's the only car to not come down and get that second stop as I quickly have a look through. But at this present point, he's out in front, 27 seconds. He is doing it quite comfortably, pardon me. And I think he's just in that box seat, isn't he, Sam? And he's been punching out the lap times. He's been so consistent. Even his last lap was a 29.7. We said he was consistent doing 29.5s. His bowler gets passed up by Dylan Rudd on the fresh rubber. We said he was being consistent. As we say that, in the pit lane comes James Scott, our race leader. He was so consistent in that stint, Sam, man.
Yeah, I'm almost jealous of that driving stint because how good is it when you're leading a race and you're just setting your own pace and everyone else's tyres are falling off, and yours have probably fallen off a little bit too, but he still carried that pace and momentum and was able to gap the field. So now he's pitted on lap 23. He's just getting one of those compulsory pit stops, and as Jake touched on, he'll leave pit lane, he'll be on the fresh tyres, and he'll just be giving everyone else grief, and they'll be just like, oh, well, throw their hands up in the air. What are we going to do about it? Nothing much just yet.
Yeah, nothing much as he gets down off the jacks, leaves the pit lane. Let's see how much clearer he has. Robert Gibbs has already gone past him, and he is already halfway down into the, here it is, down into the southern loop. So Robert Gibbs has got a bit of a gap right now, 7.8 seconds for the Evolution Racing Team driver now down out of the southern loop, who he has done his first stop. He pitted 11 laps to go, so he's sort of running that strategy of 15 odd laps, then another 15. It looks like that's sort of where Robert Gibbs is going, so he'll be coming down soon. But Scott has come out just in front of Briggs. Again, that surprises me, a 7-second gap.
Dylan Rudd's in big traffic. Sorry to cut you off, Jake, but he was 3 wide with 2 guys just then trying to get through traffic.
He's forcing every window as he can, as he's given the bumper now to try and make it. Look at this. Where do you go? I have fresh rubber. I have nowhere to go. This is where you just have to try and pick off. And look at this. He is pushing Leonard through past Jamie and Johnston. He knows he needs to try and make up ground. And I think as well,
how lucky was he? That's such a fast part of the racetrack. And just to get that little touch, he almost was fired off. That was unbelievable. What a save.
He tried to cover off the position, didn't he, Sam? And tried to get a run so that he could set up Leonard to get the position. That's just set off all the rest of this field, as that's Kuznetsov, who is also on fresh rubber as well, gets his pass Matthew Bowl. We're going to look at this as a replay, and look at this on the outside, and he's trying to cut. He just wasn't clear. He wasn't clear of Damien Johnston, but what a save. He got the car saved and has managed to hold on to it. The rest of them had to check up. But you're right, Jake. Great pick up to see he was fighting in amongst that pack. Here he goes down the inside into turn number 1. He's going to be fighting hard. He's got the job done. Real was not going to fight that too hard. He just rolled out, let that go. Hard stopping moment for Dylan Rudd. What a save, but it's one of those things as well, Sam, man. You're coming out on fresh rubber. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be trying to save a race car. He needs to be trying to gain the gap back up to Scott.
Yeah, that too. And, you know, yes, he was trying to get the job done. And it wasn't so much as about shutting the door. It was about the nature of that racing line too, because he was on the inside. Obviously, the car is going to push out a little bit. And there was just that little bit of overlay with each other. And it's just like, oh, my goodness, that could have been so ugly. I think he's just thanking his lucky stars that he stood on the racetrack and in contention.
Hey, he's lucky to be out there and still going and not in the fence, because that would have been a big accident, and who knows where he would have come back, because there was a big train of cars in front of him. If he went across that grass, I don't know if he's going to come back. But 5.6 seconds right now. The gap is coming down quite quickly between Gibbs and Scott. And Jake, this is like you said, get the Jaws music out. He's coming, and he's going to be coming quick.
Yeah, I think Gibbs is one of those ones who's sort of flown under the radar a little bit in this race.
Yeah.
He's managed to sort of stay out of trouble. That's the big thing. Like, you've got Adam Briggs, who's actually put a tight little race together, but unfortunately, I think he pits so early in this piece that he's going to be so far behind James Scott after this second stop. But, you know, the likes of Dylan and Rick Kuznetsov, they've got so tripped over by traffic that they've sort of taken themselves out of this one, which is unfortunate. Hopefully, they can still put a decent race together.
Yeah, they've really put themselves in this battle, and as we say that, Johnston and Kuznetsov going at it down into the southern loop. Sebastian Flock is the watching brief, just in behind, down into Stoner Corner, and then Miller. Let's see if Kuznetsov, he has the fresh rubber, he's going to hopefully, he should be able to have a dive, and as I say that, looks to the inside down into Miller, and is he going to get the job done? Should be pretty easy. That he does. Look at Flock in the background, sideways in the ERT Mustang, able to hold on to it. But Johnston loses another position because Kuznetsov makes up some more ground, but they're so far behind. If you look at the replay, good clean move, but Flock on the exit in the background was just having a little bit of a yeehaw moment. Managed to hold on to the Mustang, and it's coming down to the end of their second stop now, or second stint, I should say, Sam, and they'll be pitting soon again, and we only had James Scott just pit.
Yeah, absolutely. Puts him in a good position. But so if you're Gibbs, Jay, where do you put yourself as a driver? If, you know, you're out in front, you know obviously Scott's catching you because he's got the fresh tyres. Do you wait until Scott gets past you and then decide to pit straight away? Or do you try and just see if you can hold on to him a little bit and just let the race play out?
It depends how you want to race, to be honest, Sam. Man, if it were me and I'd had that bigger undercut and I had someone that quick coming, I'd wait till they get in the back of me and make sure they don't get past me. Try and slow them up as much as possible. That's really the only way you can play yourself into this race. But with that being said, Robert Gibbs has managed to put himself in a position where he's got a pretty easy P2 or P3 here if he keeps it on the road. And in the scheme of being in that top 25, that's a really good result. So it sort of depends how you want to play it.
Yeah, and I agree with that because the pressure's off a little bit being round one for these guys in the top 10 or 20 positions. If it was round 2, 3, 4 and they'd had a couple of shockers and they need to sort of capitalise on some good points, that's when the pressure's going to be, I think. But yeah, being round one and these guys are in a decent position, I'm sort of interested to see how the mindset is.
I think that's one of those factors as well we're going to bring into this. This is a 4-race championship. You have a good run now. You set yourself up quite nicely for the rest of the championship, where you don't have to fight too hard. I think I'm no driver. Don't quote me on this. I think Gibbs maybe wait until Scott gets to him. I don't know whether that would be a factor, Jake, in terms of wait for him to get to him and then go, okay, you've got me. Even if he passes in that lap, come and get some full fresh rubber. Try and capitalise. I know undercut's not going to make that much of a difference, but he's shown that he's done well. He stayed out of trouble. The issue is if he pits earlier than everyone else behind, it's going to put him into traffic. And I don't know how you play that, Jake, with this position that he's in.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Like, really for Gibbs at the moment, you've got a lead, you've got the opportunity to, even if you lose the position of James Scott, you can hang on to him, save a bit of fuel. I wouldn't be pitting for as long as possible because it's going to cost him about 27 seconds going down pit lane, and that's going to put him into a world of pain if he pits right now. So I reckon staying out is definitely the key. How you play James Scott, though, is the question.
That's it. And when you look at Dylan Rudd and Rick Kuznetsov, they got put in traffic, and I don't even think they're going to finish in the top 5 at this present point. I think at the moment, Rudd is obviously 6, but Kuznetsov's just sitting outside that top 8 at the moment in P number 8, sorry. So, like, how do you play that? They've fallen into this battle pack there, man, that now they've got to try and get out of it. And looking back at this battle pack, this is the one behind him. Johnston, Flock, Bowler, Mitchison, it's all on.
Yeah, and like we were saying, a pit stop now, 27 seconds maybe, puts you back in maybe 15th position. So, and then you are behind a little bit of this chaos. So, Yeah, I think good luck to him trying to hold up Scott, the amount of tyre grip that Scott's got. But, you know, do what he can, and then just, you know, obviously you're not going to roll over and make it too easy for him.
No.
But, you know, there's obviously going to be points in the racetrack where he's just going to get that corner exit, and you'll just be a sitting duck. But he's obviously putting himself in a decent position, and he knows he's got quite a few seconds up his sleeve. Like it's almost 10 seconds back to Briggs for third. So, yeah, it's not a bad little position to be for the opening round of this qualifying series.
No, that's exactly right. And I think as well with Gibbs, he's got a factor. Scott's tyres are falling off. They're going, the tyre grip goes away so quick, and I'm sure you'll say that as well, Jake. The tyre grip goes off so quick and then just stays. It doesn't really, it drops off a lot, but it depends on how you drive it. Gibbs is doing well. He did a 29.4 last time around. Scott only did a 29.0. The lap time difference was only 0.4 of a second. It was a second odd plus at the start of the stint. It's only coming back a little bit at a time at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. And something I actually didn't realise until I just checked is, to be honest, I don't know much of Robert Gibbs, to be honest. It's not a name I've seen a lot before, but these two are actually teammates as well, is something also to remember. Actually, no, sorry, got that completely wrong. But
I was
nonetheless,
say the liveries don't look the same, but we'll go with it.
Yep, my bad. Read the sheet wrong. But nonetheless, you've seen the kind of longevity that someone like James Scott can get out of the car in clear air. So, you know, you might try and copy that. I was going to say you copy that as his teammate, but you can copy that anyway. Just try and stay out there, get some laps on it, basically run the thing out of fuel. So I think he probably would have taken a bit less fuel as well. Just run the thing out of fuel, run it while it's fast and light, keep the tyres good, and then, yeah, pit as late as possible.
Yeah, I think that's definitely his factor at the moment. He's doing well. He's doing what he needs to do. He's definitely flown under our radar so far in this one. And look at these three. Johnston, Flock, Bowler, pit lane, all at the same time. Now it's going to be the battle of pit crews, even though we don't see him soon. Hashtag soon, maybe one day. Now these guys come down on the pit lane and going to see who has the better strategy so far. Thomas Hinds moved himself up another position, had a quiet race so far inside the top 11s as well. Moves himself up. Bailey Frid just behind him at the moment. I think that's actually Zachary Hamlin who was a lap down. But yeah, Bailey Frid a little bit further behind in P number 12. But this is where the strategy comes out. This is where the field cleanses, doesn't it, Sam? And we now know who put in more, who put in less, who's going to be on the better strategy for the end of this race. It all starts to play out now with just over 15 laps to go.
Absolutely. And to a degree, there is a little bit of a battle of the pit crews because it's so easy just to miss your mark. If you stop short in your box, or if you go long and you have to pull reverse, that's a real kick in the guts. And especially when you know how close that these racing is, you know, you don't want to give up too much time in the pit lane. You can make up time getting to that pit lane speed limiter as long as you don't break that obviously speed limit and get a penalty. So that's crucial. So that plays a big part, and that really does start to put the pressure on these guys, especially when you're in these big group packs of racing.
Yeah, and when you're in these big group packs, it's hard to try and figure out if you're actually racing them later on in the race. You don't want to waste the time as far run. That car stepped out mid-corner. It looked like it did. I don't know whether that was my eyes, but it looked like it stepped out. He gets a really good exit on Stenberg. He's going to go to the inside. He wants to make this one stick, move himself up back inside that top 5 and gets the job done. Look at how it washes out on the exit, though, as he runs that shallower line through turn number 1. But gets the job done, moves himself up into P number 5. Stenberg loses that position. Having a quiet run as well, I should say, as another bunch of cars on the pit lane, Jake. We said it at the start, maybe splitting this race up into 3s. A lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, you know, you really got to weigh up when you pit as well, because you need to balance that with fuel. Because if you know you've taken a bunch of fuel on the first stint, you know that you're going to have a little bit less in the second stint. So maybe you can afford to go a little bit longer. It's a big balancing act. And on Sandman's point as well, if you're in a lucky enough position that you've taken enough fuel in the first stint that you only have to take, say, 15 or whatever litres in the second stint, it then comes down to your tyre change time, which can actually vary quite a lot. A couple seconds in this game can kill you. You would know, Jay, from racing in the Supercars E-Series, that sometimes you'll get a 7.8 second stop, sometimes you'll get a 10-second stop, and that 2 seconds can absolutely murder you in terms of track position.
Oh, sorry to butt in. There is a car parked. Oh, yep. You know, is this going to bring out a safety car? Tyson.
Is this on the inside of Southern Loop? It is. That's a dangerous position. That's...
Has he run out of fuel? I'm just trying to think what would deem
Either
him.
he's ran out of fuel
Yeah.
or he's made a mistake. Safety car is out. There it is, the call. Safety car is out. And that's going to change it. What happened
He's
there?
gone wide.
It died mid-corner, didn't it? Maybe a mechanical? And when I say mechanical, I mean hardware failure. Because that just veered to the right like something happened. Like maybe he lost throttle.
Looks like I think he got out of the way. Yeah, he could have either lost
Like
throttle
if you
or-
brake a throttle, I had it in the E series. I lost my brake pedal and went straight on. I had no brake. It's one of those things that just happens. You sometimes it will malfunction. It's like maybe
I know he's pain. If that's the case, I broke a throttle a couple of months back, and the only good thing to come from that is that I bought a brand new set of pedals.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only good thing that comes from it. When the race that you're doing all goes downhill, you're like, damn it,
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it. And now it's like, oh, I get a new set of pedals after this. Oh, well, that paid out for it. But no, we definitely
Now-
won't be wanting that.
Well,
But
and the one thing that I was touching on a little bit earlier is that I guess Phillip Island doesn't normally, when you think safety cars at a racetrack, I guess Phillip Island's not high on the list
No.
for safety cars, where that like other tracks will come to your mind and you go, we're definitely going to see maybe 2, 3
Sandown.
safety cars. Yeah.
you know,
But you just never know. So now how does this shake things up? Because there's obviously some people that have just made their second stop, but there's other drivers out there that haven't made their second stop.
it throws a spanner in the works, to say the least, as we look at this. Scott and Gibbs, everyone's going to come down pit lane. Who hasn't
Absolutely.
done their second stop will come down on the pit lane. Those who have, I don't know whether it will benefit them or hurt them.
Gibbs out in the lead.
Yeah, Gibbs out in the
not in
lead. That's a shock.
Now, is that fuel? See, he may have short fueled and that may have been enough for him to get the lead.
Well, you've got to look at it as well. Scott has gained that much time back in terms of, I think we can say, in terms of the pit stop window, but Gibbs must have had enough fuel on where he's just put enough in right now to short fill him. He'll save a little bit on the safety car, got himself out in front. Job done. 11.5 stop from both of them. Well done.
Yeah, and he would have been the first to hit the pit lane too because he was still leading. So Scott hadn't caught him in time to do that pass. So there's a spanner in the works for you, boys.
What's interesting about that one is Gibbs's pit stop, his first stop, was actually 4 seconds shorter than James Scott. And I watched James Scott's pit stop, and it was a mint entry, a mint pull up to the box. So Robert Gibbs has definitely taken less fuel, relatively speaking, than what James Scott has. But based off how much he's lifting and coasting and clutching this thing on the outlap, I dare say he may have cut it a bit fine.
Oh no, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're this close to the end and you run out of fuel, especially for round one. I would give up a win and finish in the top 5 to come home with those points than run out of fuel and finish dead last, because with 3 races after this, it's going to be almost job impossible if he finishes last.
It's a hard basket to be in, isn't it? To think, if I just put a little bit less fuel, I can save a little bit on this outlap. You know you're going to be on the safety car, and I think that's something that you've got to think of. You know you're going to be on the safety car. You can save a lot of fuel on the safety car by trying just to roll around. I think that's what he's trying to do now. You can hear it. He's just rolling around. But yeah, like you said, Sam, man, is it worth losing 20 or 30 odd positions because the field's going to be congested? And that's the issue. You make one mistake if he tries to fuel save and James Scott accidentally gets in the back of him because he brakes early or clutches early trying to save fuel, and it upsets where Scott is. He could go down the field and lose all this time. It's a difficult risk to take. It's obviously big risk, could be a big reward. It's just very hard at this point of the day, isn't it? I don't know whether I want to be in any seat right now.
Well, I think I put myself in a position where everyone loves a race win. We all know that as a fact, but you don't have to win. You just need to get yourself, in this series, all you need to do is finish high enough where you're inside that cutoff. You know, you can finish 5th in every race or 10th in every race, and there's a pretty good chance that you're going to make it through. So roll on the dice for possibly a win. Oh, geez, it's scary. But like you said, he is in a position now where he's saving all the fuel he can, and he probably only needs, just that little bit more. It's probably going to be about, maybe 10 laps to go by the time we go green, or maybe 9.
Yeah, I think it'll be roughly 10 to go, there or thereabouts. So if you put enough fuel in for 10 laps to go, he's going to be sweet. But and this is also it's one of those things, like you said, Sam, and you hit the nail on the head in terms of you only need to be in the top 20 to qualify for the main series. all you needed to do was just come out second behind Scott, you know, and roll around in second. If that's what he wanted to do, you know what I mean? If you had the pace to get over James Scott, then so be it. Do it. You know what I mean? Do it on the track and get overtake him. Then that's what he would have done. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's how much do you risk this for when you have a solid top 5? And I think that's one thing as well, Jake. It's a solid top 5 in a championship you need to qualify for. Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's the risk is high, but I also don't think it's as much as what we think. Like looking at it, James Scott's most recent pit stop was 0.6 slower than Robert Gibbs, so he took 0.6 faster, so he took 0.6 of a second less fuel last stop. But in the first stop, it was 4.5 seconds longer. So really, Robert Gibbs has 3.9 seconds less fuel effectively, give or take.
Yeah.
So that's really probably about 7-8 litres, which is a lot, but when you consider that we're going to have 2 laps under safety car here, one more than I actually thought we would, and the fact that, you know, you can save 100 mils a lap or something, I don't think it's totally out of the window. Will he be able to win the race? Maybe not, but I think that probably comes down to car speed anyway. But I think he'll definitely be able to get home, but I don't think this is going to be a straight DNF unless he completely cooks it.
No, I definitely don't think it'll be a straight DNF. It's just how much does he try and save, and it's always the factor of someone has enough fuel as a safety car now leaves the field and leaves Robert Gibbs in control of this race restart. It's one of those things, and I don't know whether, I know I've been a factor of it where you've been fuel saving and then someone behind who isn't fuel saving, just you braking that little bit earlier just throws off the guy behind because they're braking at their normal brake marker, whereas you're just rolling out trying to save fuel, and then they make contact with you and you lose all that time. It's not a matter of getting a DNF from, you know, running out of fuel. It's more of other people behind you not being aware, and that can happen. Not saying it will. We have some of the best drivers in this series. They all had to qualify to get here, and that is what they have to do in terms of 4 races qualify, and we got a safety car with over 10 laps to go. Round 1 of the Logitech G Pro Supercar Invitational qualifying series here from Phillip Island. Gibbs has played the master stroke so far to put himself out in front for this restart. James Scott in behind. There is a lap car, Zachary Hanlon in amongst it all. MP number 3, Dyson is third with Wallace behind, and Gibbs is gone. Good restart here from Robert Gibbs, and let's see if he can try and pull out a gap, Sam.
Yeah, that was a nice restart too, wasn't it? Yes, you've got the still the car behind you, but if you can get the rest of the field and make sure that no one's got to do that massive dive bomb, then that sort of makes it life a little bit easier for you. Look at that little gap. So, but back behind him, it's a bit of a hornet's nest.
There's a big gaggle of cars around top 10. That's where Kuznetsov, Rudd, and all a bunch of other drivers are at the moment. Looking further back through, maybe Fred. Oh, he's got Dengate on his inside. Looks like he's going to capitalise, but 0.2 of a second. Here comes Scott down into Miller corner. He's not close enough this time, but he shows the nose. Lets Gibbs know he's there.
Absolutely. Oh, look at him. Oh, look it up.
Yeah.
Someone's gone deep. Is that going to be a hit?
Oh, I don't know. It was. Yeah, it was. Oh, there's a big one. Car in the air in the background. There's a big accident down at Miller corner. This could be another safety car. Safety cars breed safety cars. We do know that is a factor. They all got going. It looks like everyone's got going. There's a car stuck to the inside wall. There's another car on the outside. Oh, as long as they all get going. This is Brian Borg involved. He was up inside that top 10. He has had a shocking opening round to the qualifying series after a strong qualifying session. Now, Gibbs has got Scott over him. Do you expect this move soon, Jake? Or is he just going to sit there and wait?
Well, if you're James Scott, you want to get it done and dusted as quickly as possible. But if I were Robert Gibbs, I would be fuel saving this thing, parking it on the white line, trying to feed him back into Dyson. That's how you win this race if you're Robert Gibbs. But again, he might just opt to tuck in behind, save some fuel behind him. But we'll see how this plays out. But if I'm Robert Gibbs, I'm blocking, I'm pulling him up, I'm slowing him down as much as possible.
Yeah, let's see what he does. Is Scott in behind? They're pulling out a gap from Dyson in P number 3 so far at the moment. 1 second between the top 2 and P number 3. Scott, he's close enough. He doesn't show the nose this time, Sandman, but I think he's just going to be that stalking breather. Bring up a replay. So there was 2 incidents. So this was Sebastian Flock in the background actually had an incident. How the field did not collect him. Wow. One of the other TTR cars. And then this is the big one. Just so many
Yeah.
cars, Borg involved, Dengate involved, another couple of SSR cars involved. It was just a massive mess. And we said this, Sam, man, at the start of the show, you don't want to get involved in an incident in round 1 of the championship. Some people have, especially with, like the likes of Brian Borg, Dengate. They were quick. We knew they were up inside that top 10, especially for Borg, and it's all gone south.
Yeah, the scary bit about those incidents on restarts like that is it's a concertina effect. It only takes one person just to misjudge their brake and marker, and if they get into the car in front of them, then they obviously nose to tail into the rest of the other cars, and it's almost like a bowling effect where, unfortunately, it took out a couple of good cars there. But that's the danger, isn't it? That at the end of the day, you don't want to be put in a position like that, especially with the amount of laps we've got to go. You don't want it to happen at all, but man, oh man, not towards the end of the race.
Yeah, not at this stage of the race, not right where you're at the end of the stint. You're coming down to the wire, you've got under 10 laps to go, you're in the position to sort of get inside that top 20 and make sure that you're comfortable and get some solid points for the opening round, but it wasn't to be. But at the moment, Dyson, Stenberg, the little quiet achiever right now inside that top 5 as Scott all over the back in Miller corner. He's giving him a shove out of Miller, coming up into Siberia. Will he have another look to the inside? He doesn't. But Scott has been running lines that we've been picking up on. Luke has picked up on it as well. And I want to hear your thoughts, Jake. Coming here, he's going to come over through Hayshed. Watch his line through Lukey Heights. He's using a lot more curve than everyone else, and he has been most of the time. He's going to come over Lukey Heights and down into MG, just using all the curve and more on this inside. Is it just the way that car is balanced or how he's feeling inside?
It's pretty standard how you might run that corner. I think maybe Robert Gibbs might have struggled and missed a couple apexes that lap, but yeah, you typically want to turn it in off the outside curb, get it right down to first gear and use all the camber. There's a surprising amount of camber here at MG, but it looks like we could have a run here, a bit of a toe, and he's going to go to the inside.
Oh, no!
Gibbs has defended it, but he shoved the nose down the inside and said, I'm not going to take that. I'm going to put it down the inside into turn number 1. Gibbs is going to try and hold the outside line into the southern loop. That's the way to do it, to hold on into turn number 2. Look at the run. He's going to block the apex. He's going to park the bus, and he does a good job and says, Scott, you're going to do it again. Let's see. Down through Stoner. Will he have another dig? Scott looks like he has the speed over Gibbs right now, Sam, and here he comes. Is there going to be a defense? No, there isn't, but he opens the door, and in comes Scott. Is he going to make it? Oh, they both inside front lock. They both inside front lock into Miller. That's going to open up the door to the outside. This is not where you want to be into Siberia, Sam, man. Can he try and hold it on around the outside?
Mate, what he wants to do is exactly what Jake mentioned before, is to bring the rest of the field into this pack too, so it'll have him looking at his rearview mirror. He has got a little bit of a gap, but we know he's fast through here. Look at the way he gets the car up on the curb. He gets the car turned in. I think he's going to try and make a dive. He's always gone to the, I guess, the outside, but maybe will he fire about a look up the inside here? Not quite. He does like riding that curb for the turn in, but I think he's got so much pace. He'll just stay nice and close. That's just braille for, you know what, I'm fast and I'm coming through. I think he's going to get a draft down this front straight. He might have just dropped off a little bit, but I was thinking about the slingshot down the front straight into turn 1.
He gave him a little bit of a bump in the middle of MG, and I think that maybe put him a little bit too far back. But Gibbs went defensive. Will he go defensive again into turn number 1? It's Gibbs and Scott out in front from round 1 of the qualifying series. He's going to throw this down the inside late, but Gibbs was able to hold on around the outside. He's not far enough up this time around. Gibbs going to hold that inside, that tight inside line, Jake. That's going to keep him on the inside, but at the moment, he's going to go around the outside.
Oh, kidding.
Did they make contact in the middle of the corner, or was that off the curb? I don't know, but Jake, how does this feel being in a heated battle like this, in amongst this with not many laps to go, and you see the rest of the field coming behind you?
This is awesome. Robert Gibbs made a huge mistake on that first opportunity that James Scott had. He covered the line, but he left half a lane there, and James threw it down there. Managed to stay in front, though, and I think now he's got into James's head a little bit. Now he's just going to sit there, park the bus every corner, and time's ticking because Andrew Dyson's coming.
Look at the field of cars behind him. There's like a pack of 8 cars, sorry. That's quick maths trying to do it off a camera shot. The top 9 cars are within 2.5 seconds. Gibbs is trying to back this field up. Dyson, Stenberg, and the rest of them are coming, and it's going to be on but it's not over yet. Any of these guys inside that top 9 could easily win this race if this starts to kick off with fireworks, Sandman. We've seen this all before. It's kicked off numerous times in the main series last year. It's already kicking off again in the qualifying series. Scott looks like he has a good run. Is Gibbs going to make sure he covers that extra half a car length to the inside into turn 1 this time around?
Well, I think he'll probably let him have a little bit, but if he gets too far alongside, and I think he has now, he's probably going to be it's going to be a hard decision to try and battle into the next corner.
Oh, he's in the grass!
Oh, he held onto it though. Holy smoke! I thought he was going to fire off, but yeah, Scott had got enough pass where he was going to get the job done. He tried to hold him out lap after lap, but just couldn't quite do it. But I think that'll be the last we see of Scott. I think he'll just start to disappear in the distance.
The one thing now is he's got to try and do is see if he can have a quick fight back. Scott straight away on the defensive into Miller. He knows that Gibbs is going to not let this one go. He needs to try and have a quick attack. It's so crucial to have an attack straight away, get the job back done and try and put himself back in front, isn't it, Jake? Because as soon as Scott gets into clean air and starts to get his rhythm back, he's gone.
Yeah, not wanting to be a race killer, but I think this is done. I think James Scott is going to check out now. He sat there for too long, and of course, then we saw Robert Gibbs have that moment on the exit of turn 1, which would have fried those rears, and now he's got to wait a lap or two for him to come back. I think he can still hold on to P2 pretty easily here, but I think James Scott's now in control of this race.
Oh, yeah, exactly. James Scott is basically in control. He's got his head down now. He's been able to gap 0.4 of a second, just pulling out those couple of car legs. He's able to put himself in a prime position with 5 laps to go. Out in front of this battle back behind Dyson, Stenberg, Briggs, Stewart, Run, Lianic and Kuznetsov inside that top 9 battle pack. Watch him straight down into turn number 1 for 5 laps to go.
I'm doing my best not to have my TTR jacket on at the moment, but how good is it to see Steady up there having a red hot go? Like, you know, things weren't sort of panning out the way, well, we weren't quite sure about how his race was going to pan out with different pit stop strategies and everything else, but to see him in the thick of it now, that's terrific. So he'd be getting a real kick out of this.
Gibbs has come back. I was not expecting this, but Gibbs has managed to gain back all through turn 1 and 2. He's going to have a look. He's going to actually make Scott go defensive to the inside of Miller. He's given him a shove. He's going to unrattle him. He's going to rattle him again on the exit. Just going to give him a couple of more scopes. Stenberg, as you say that, has dropped down the order.
No!
Stenberg, what have you done?
Oh, commentator's curse!
Stenberg's off the road. He was inside the top 5 in P number 4. What has happened to Stenny? He was comfortable. That's on you. That's on you. I bet you're wearing that one.
Sorry,
oh my
Stenny.
God, Stenny was inside and actually broken up this battle pack behind and let Dyson get away. Something must have happened. Here it was, down into Miller. Did he get a tap from behind, or was this all on his own?
Oh, he got hit. Oh, no.
Just a little tap on exit, and that was just enough. And once you're on the grass, it's so hard to stop these cars now once you're offline and in the grass. As Briggs has managed to pull himself up into P number 4. Let's see.
Remind me to tell you a story about a friend I used to have called Stenny.
Yeah, that one's gone
God.
up this one. Oh, Stenberg has fallen well down the order. It's still a battle as Stewart and Lianic going at it into turn 9. Dylan Rudd, now the watching brief, trying to see if he can make up a position, but he can't do so. Stewart has had a good quiet race, managing to make up some spots inside this top 10, hasn't he, Sam? But now, let's see if he can have a run on his teammate, Putterbean.
Yeah, good little battle here. I keep looking at that battle up between first and second too, because I guess we all said that we expected Scott just to check out, but maybe he's just looking after things. There's still a few laps to go, but you know, obviously still staying in touch with a little bit of that draft too is key too. So that's obviously helpful. It's a free little bit of speed up inside your pocket, I guess, when you've got that little bit of draft in front of you. Yeah,
and I think that'll be one of those things as well where you'll know this, Jake. Yes, you may have gotten past and you may have that quicker speed, but that straight line, you said it, what was it, a couple of tenths you may be gaining down into turn 1 every lap. If you're just keeping him in touch, I don't think he has the straight outright speed at the moment. I think we can all say that Scott's like he has the better car speed, but the draft is just keeping him in touch so far.
Yeah, that's it. And it's one of those things that sort of weirdly, the further away you get, the harder it becomes, because the gain that you get from the toe is worse and worse the further away you get, but the aero push stays just as bad. So it's one of those things where he's really got to stay in touch and try and get a move done down into Miller Corner. But he's fallen away about, a tenth over the last couple of laps, so it's going to be tough for him from now on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just falling out of that window now where he can't manage to make it into that window where he needs to be able to gain that time back. But this battle is heating up for P number 4. It's going to be all on you, Sam Hand, to the end. We've only got roughly 3 laps to go.
Yeah, I think that what these guys can do, they can afford to just drive smart because, you know, we touched on it before. You don't need to win. They're in a decent position. And this is, there's a little bit of a dive there up the inside. Oh, they're going to get it done. Yep. But still fighting again. But yes, what they are in, they're in a position where they know that they can tick off and have a good round 1 because you obviously don't know how it's going to play out for the next 3 rounds. So, you know, you in that top 10, and that's just crucial as far as trying to buy a ticket to the big series.
That's it. You just need to manage to get as many points as possible, especially in these early stages. Scott out in front, Gibbs P2. Not many laps to go, and they've managed to pull away from Dyson behind. And I think that's as well a good factor for Gibbs behind. He's got no pressure behind, does he, Sam? Yeah. He's managed to be able to just to concentrate on trying to keep with Scott. He may not have that ultra car speed, but he's managing to keep that gap in amongst that half a second to a second range and just be able to bring himself along to the end.
Yeah, I think if you spoke to a lot of these drivers before this race and said, hey, I guarantee you a top 5, would you take it? Guess what? They'd take it. So regardless of, you know, everyone obviously wants to win, but yeah, to be P2 and in touch with the leader, yeah, don't make any silly mistakes and just bring it home.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where you want to be at this stage of the race, is the top 5 starting to heat up this little battle. Where is he going to go? Is he going to go to the outside? Is he going to go to the inside into Miller through Stoner in this draft? He's going to teammate in behind him. Will he move and look to the inside of Briggs? He doesn't this time around. Just going to stay stagnant. Not many laps to go. 2 laps to go, Jake. And what an opening round of the qualifying series it's been.
Yeah, Phillip Island always turns it on, especially when you throw that safety car in there. It's nice to see someone put James Scott under pressure a little bit because it looked like it was all his around that halfway point. And then once everyone's tyres got reset and all got set back to normal, Robert Gibbs has really shown up. I've been really impressed with his drive. There's also a couple others who have had quite good drives. One that catches my eye is probably actually Thomas Hinds. I was noticing him, from 26th to 12th. So that's a pretty mad drive from him. That'll, when you qualify outside the qualifying spot and finish well into it, it's a pretty good effort.
Yeah, that's when you know you've got to, like we said, some people can't qualify, some can race. We mentioned that, and obviously Hinds has showed up and been able to stay out of trouble and put himself into the position. White flag is out. There is Barney the flag man waving us down for the opening night of the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational, the qualifying series from Phillip Island. And it is the final lap, and Scott had it all his way, Sam, man, early on. But man, Gibbs has put the fight up to him at the end.
Yeah, it's brilliant. He didn't lay down. He's brought it to him, and it's just the way strategy plays out. We saw how strong he was on old tyres, and obviously the safety car threw a spanner in the works for him. But nevertheless, he's still, at this stage, going to get the job done. And what a cracking opening round for this qualifying series. And this is just a taste of what we've got in store for 2023. I mean, if this is just the icing on the cake, I already can't wait for round 2. But what a cracker of a season we're going to have in 2023.
I can't wait. 2023 is going to be one of those magical seasons. Unfortunately, I won't be joining you either of you two boys next week, which will be a shame on my part. But I can't wait to come back for round 3 of the qualifying series and see what happens for the rest of this championship. But James Scott out in front for the final time, coming down into MG over Lukey Heights. What a drive from the SSR driver to come along and get the opening round qualifying series. Just a couple of corners left to come around. Robert Gibbs in hot pursuit, but I don't think it's going to matter as James Scott will come out of the final quarter and take the opening night of the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational qualifying. It is all James Scott to come across and take the opening round victory. Not much in it between himself and Robert Gibbs, as Andrew Dyson will come home and finish in P3. Those rest of that big battle pack ended with Briggs, Liani, Stewart, Kuznetsov, Rudd coming across the line as well. All basically stayed as they were. So the rest of the field follows through as, I was like, are they side by side going to come to the stripe? But what an opening night. You've got to go and apologise to Stenberg because I'm sure he's going to be a little bit upset with you.
Yes. Oh, isn't that unreal? Well, there was a bit of a drag race to the finish line there. I didn't quite catch who that was, but yeah, I know there'll be people that'll be walking away from this round going, yep, beauty. I think we can breathe a little bit. And then there's some people walking away going, oh, we've got our work cut out for us for the next couple of rounds. Because round number 2, I think we head to Hockenheim.
I believe we do. We head to Hockenheim. Well, you guys will, but I will head there in virtual essence and most probably catch up on all the action as soon as I can. But what a drive from James Scott. You can say it, Jake, as well, in your words of being a driver. You know how hard it is, but he has done a mega job to get that one done, and his consistency put himself on the map that race.
Yeah, that's it. The experience shows, I think, for sure in that one. It was just consistent. It was a clean drive, no mistakes. Probably didn't have the strategy go quite his way, but still managed to pull off the result. One thing I will say is I'm actually surprised that Robert Gibbs didn't defend a little bit harder on that last move. I think he got a little bit confident that he could just keep holding around the outside, and the grip started to disappear on that last one. I think we could have been in for a bit more of a race had he defended that first corner, but nonetheless, stellar job from James Scott.
Yeah, stellar job from Scott. Stellar drive from Robert Gibbs. I think we can all say that as well. That was a mega job to actually get the job done and put himself in that position. But what a drive from James Scott, our winner here for the opening round of the qualifying series for the Logitech Supercars Pro Invitational, as we will run through those results. James Scott, as he burns those, whatever's left of those done. Actually, they should be pretty fresh. They've only done 10 on that. Yeah, they won't be too. Well, they were okay. Now they're not.
Yeah, they're coffee tables.
Yeah, they're coffee tables. Anyone want a coffee table? There's some coffee tables. As Scott burns them down to get the job done here tonight, and very well deserved. That consistency in that stint that he had, in that opening stint, I should say. It's not the second stint, but that first stint was mega. He did a really good job. Scott comes home with the victory. Robert Gibbs comes home in P number 2 with Andrew Dyson, rounding out the podium. Adam Briggs, Rehan Janich in P number 5. Job Stewart, Rick Kuznetsov, Dylan Rudd, Sean McNamara, and Jamie and Johnstone rounds out the top 10. Thomas Hinz, as Jake said, did a really good job to move himself up inside that top 20. That's all that matters to get himself into P number 12. As we look further afield, Kenneth Lutter in 18th as well, which moves himself up inside that top 20. And there is that bubble, Michael Waddell. Michael Angus as well moved himself. The 2 Fishy Motorsports cars put themselves inside the top 20. 21st for Paul Hunt, 22nd for Kurt Stenberg. You've got some talking to do there, Mr. Sam, and I think that's going to be one. A couple of notables further down the field: Sebastian Flock, Brian Borg, they were involved in the incident. Josh Bumbleton as well. What could have been for the TTR drivers if they were both up there, but unfortunately unable to get the job done. I don't think we have any interviews, and I'm not going to pull people up because I don't. It's up to them if they want to come and do it. This is the qualifying series. We'll see if maybe we can try and get James Scott. I'll see if I can try and pull our race winner up and see if we can get a word with him. But any final comments as well from you before we get into a quick interview with James Scott, Sam, and on what was a really good race?
Well, you touched on with Muggleton. You know, it's one of those things to bounce back from, you know, a penalty, but when you get disconnected from the service, that's when it hurts. You know, we spoke about last season about how unfortunately Madison Down missed out with that round 1 and then just had his whole season to fight back and then ended up finishing second. But different story for the qualifying series because we're only talking 4 races. So when he gets disconnected like that, it's, you know, like I said, you can bounce back from a penalty, but it's pretty tricky when you got to bounce back from a DNF.
Yeah, it's always hard to come back from DNFs, and well, it's going to be hard to come back from that. But here he is, our race winner, James Scott. What a drive. The consistency out there was mega. Tell us about your night, because that looked really good.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It was a pretty good night. The car felt really good. It was just really hard with the draft. It's really hard to pull away. But the car had really good tyre life, which I think, even though it was just about a 2-second gap, it really helped in the first stint, getting it over Dylan and Rick in third. And then the safety car probably didn't come at the right time for us, but luckily enough, we had the pace to get past and hold on for the win.
Yeah, tell us about that first stint. Was that just a matter of running it long? Because if that safety car didn't come out in the second stint, it was just going to be 2 quick, short flyers and then go from there. But that consistency at the end of that stint, that was mega speed. Was that all just how you planned that race to go, or was that just a spur of the moment? Oh, the car's good, we'll just keep going?
Yeah, the car felt really good, and I had a few guys helping me spot as well, which helped out a fair bit. I was able to see that my lap speed wasn't that much worse than the guys who were on fresher tyres, so I just thought there's not really any point pitting. I saw Robert, he was doing some pretty fast laps, but I knew that he would have been burning his tyres off while doing it, so... and I thought that showed, just the safety car came at the wrong time before we could have had a battle in that middle stint there, but yeah, no, we just sort of played it by ear, really.
Definitely, like, you guys had it all under control though, in what was a mega drive. Congratulations on a stellar performance in the opening round of the qualifying series. Anyone you'd like to thank, any shout outs before we let you go?
Yeah, first off, Brady and Luke for being on the mic tonight. That helped out a fair bit. Wasn't able to run the strategy without those guys. Probably would have pitted a hell of a lot earlier. And obviously all our great sponsors at SSR with Wave Runner Performance, Positives Mechanical, Smith & Sons, Too Easy Finance, West End Mazda, Dr. Epoxy, and obviously you guys for the great broadcast and the series admin as well for putting it on.
Thank you for the kind words, and we look forward to hopefully having a good run at Hockenheim in next week.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. That was James Scott, our race winner of the opening night of the Logitech Supercar Pro Invitational Qualifying Series. And Sam, man, you're going to be stood by with our P number 2, Robert Gibbs.
Robert, mate, congratulations. You sort of you snuck up on us a little bit. It was when you took that lead and then that safety car came out. I think that really played out for you. How did your race play out? I think it looked pretty good from our seat.
Yeah, we sort of had a strategy between the 4 of us of just, doing 15 lap runs just to make it nice and simple. And first one worked out because I think I undercut the guys in front of me by, maybe 6 or 7 laps, and worked out pretty well. I was a bit curious as to what James was doing with strategy because he stayed out a long time. But I think the safety car ended up actually nulling that because he didn't get in front of me in the end. And I short filtered a bit in the second stop to save fuel behind the safety car, and I think I got over the line with half a litre, maybe. So just enough.
We did, mate, just enough. That's all you need. We touched on that. We heard you were sort of very, very quiet behind the safety car, so we figured that might have been the case, but good strategy. You're obviously pretty happy with the result. We touched on it in the commentary that this 4-race series, as much as we all love a win, it's not all about winning. It's all about getting those decent results and buying a ticket to the big game. So obviously, regardless of not getting that win, I think you'd still be pretty happy with P2.
Yeah, I'm happy with P2. I'd be happier if I didn't get to first, and it wouldn't have been so bittersweet. But no, second's good. If I can just to get top 10s for the next 4 races, then happy days.
Well done, mate. Obviously, it'll be eyes forward now for round 2. But before we let you go, is there anyone that you want to thank?
Yeah, just like to thank the team at Evolution Racing Team, all the other 4 guys in the race for helping a bit, and Logitech G for all their support.
Well done, mate, and bring on next week. But Jake Burton, I might even hand it over to you, our 3rd place driver, Andrew Dyson.
Yeah, so coming home in P3, car number 41, the simrigs.com DPR entry of Andrew Dyson. Nice consistent run tonight, mate, up from 9th to 3rd, just stayed out of trouble. What was it? Did you just not have me taking you out tonight, or what was it?
No, everyone was pretty cruisy tonight. I think I got lucky at the end of the race there. Like I did that big undercut, and as that safety car came out, I was pretty much a sitting duck. But things kind of played my way in the best way it could for me, and unfortunate for other guys. But would have been interesting, still a bit of fun to see how it played out if it was green the whole way, because I reckon I still would have made up a couple of spots. But so it goes.
Yeah, that's it. I guess looking forward, obviously P3 is an epic way to sort of start out your season. Moving on to Hockenheim, it's not a track that the Supercars been to all that often. How do you think you'll go around there?
Hockenheim, I reckon it's Hungaroring unless I'm mistaken, but could be wrong.
My mistake. Same applies though.
Yeah. Well, nothing really changes for me. Like as far as the track goes, I haven't really done too many laps there, apart from the qualifying stuff. So haven't done a lot of race miles there, so we kind of get to suss a bit of that out, I suppose. But nothing changes. I just roll up, do the best I can, and play the gentleman's game because we're all here to do the same thing and get to the big show and try and have a crack at it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's it. Well, awesome start, mate. Have you got anyone you'd like to thank before you head off?
All the guys for putting it together. You guys are doing the broadcast and yelling at race cars. And of course, just a quick one, cheeky one to our sponsors at simrigs.com, South Valley Lift and Hoist, Ben Max Mechanicals. Phoenix Smokers and NP Designs for the wicked paint jobs. Thanks, man.
No worries. Awesome work, mate. And we'll see you next week at Hungaroring. Now, Sandman, what a race. 1 out of 4 on the books.
Mate, and didn't they entertain too? I mean, we just go back and look at some of this vision at the start and look at those cars just all bunching up. Like, I think we did pretty well to survive that first lap, but absolutely stoked. We've had round number 1 and already can't wait for round number 2. But poor old Jake, you're going to miss out, mate. You're going to have to watch the replay and tell us how we went.
I know, I'm going to have to come back in here the week after and tell you boys what you've done wrong and how many times you have commentated curse someone, because we've already got 1 tick in the book for Sampan already this week, or this year, sorry. So we'll get there. But yeah, unfortunately, work commitments are going to be not flying me around, but literally just making it a bit of a pain dependent on the start of this season. And we'll see how we go for the actual championship. I should be here, but we will see. Qualifying series, obviously, I will miss round 2 and round 4, but I'll be here for round 3. So it'll be awesome to catch up with all the action next week. But any final words, Jake, from yourself? What an opening night, and how do we top that next week?
I think next week will be an interesting one because I mentioned Hockenheim before, bit of a mistake, but Hungaroring's a very similar track in terms of it's a sort of oddball F1 track that the supercar doesn't really visit all that often. So I think you might see some odd results. I think Phillip Island's been a staple for us for probably 10 years now, right? So going to a track like that's fairly new to the service, not a lot of people have done a lot of laps around. It's got the potential to really trip some people up. And I know from the 2021 Supercars E-Series where we went there, it is actually a really hard track to be fast on in this car. So yeah, really interested to see how it goes, hoping it throws up a bit of a new winner for us, but should be a good way to finish the first half of the season.
That it should. And Sam, what a way to start our championship year. Obviously joining the commentary booth again with you at Jake this season is going to be mega, but or for the qualifying series. But how about you? Any final words before we go tonight?
I think Phillip Island turned it on like the way we expected. We saw some great racing, and now it's up to these teams. They'll go away from this week, and those teams and drivers will just start crunching and getting ready for round number 2. So really looking forward to it. Thanks, Jake Burton, for joining us, mate. It was good to have you in the commentary box, and well done to you, Jake Blackhall, for all your comments, and of course Luke behind the scenes. Good to have the band back together for 2023, and I can't wait to see how the year unfolds. It's going to be terrific.
That it is going to be. The year has only just begun. Round 1 of the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational Qualifying Series here. Again, thank you from all of us here at Race Stars TV with Luke and ASRG and everything, that all the people behind the scenes, everyone that's done an amazing job. Thank you, and I can't wait to come back in round 3. I want to be here next week. This sucks, but anyway, it is signing off tonight. James Scott, our race winner of the opening round of the qualifying series. Goodbye.